Chapter 1097. Trapped in the Forbidden Killing Formation. No one outside could save Zichen. Zichen's friends could not, and neither could his spiritual body. Of course, they would not try to save him either. Some people had the ability but were unwilling to break the rules. Thus, Zichen could only save himself. However, in the middle of the formation, Zichen could not even protect himself, let alone save himself. Thus, there was no way to break this formation. In the dusky sky, the sword light pierced through the clouds. Every time it disappeared, the next time it appeared, it would double in size. As time passed, the sky finally formed a real sword rain. Those heavenly beasts had long been pierced through by the sword rain, turning into sieves and smashed into pieces. After dodging so many times, Zichen had expended a lot of energy. At this moment, there were at least 100 wounds on his body. Although each wound was not big, there were too many wounds. As he kept bleeding, Zichen gradually became weaker. He held his spear and looked around coldly. In the Forbidden Killing Formation, Zichen not only had to defend against the sword light, but also the attacks of the assassins. Their figures were not obstructed here, and their attacks were mysterious and strange. Sword chi that contained killing intent would always appear unexpectedly, giving Zichen a lot of trouble. Chi, chi, chi! The sword light that filled the sky once again broke through the clouds and shot toward Zichen. There were so many that Zichen could no longer count them. In short, the sword light filled the entire sky, covering every corner. Zichen was unable to dodge in the face of such dense sword light. He could only hold his spear and protect himself in a circular area. Clanging sounds rang out. Zichen kept swinging his spear, shattering the sword light. Suddenly, Zichen felt an unusual killing intent coming from behind him. His expression changed as he thought to himself, "Here it comes again." He stabbed his spear behind him. However, in the next moment, several more killing intents appeared from all directions, attacking Zichen. If this was the outside world, Zichen might find it troublesome to face such an attack, but with his extreme speed he could still deal with it. However, his speed had been reduced by half and he was injured. It was already good enough that he could survive. Buzz! As the void trembled, the sword light attacked and then shot towards Zichen. Other than the sword light shot out by the assassin with the sharp blade, there were also other sword lights in the world. The assassin's body appeared and disappeared, and he actually ignored the sword light in the world. Zichen picked a direction with his spear and pierced through it. Clanging sounds were heard as Zichen broke one of the sword lights. However, the rest of the attacks instantly pierced into Zichen's body. Pooh! Pooh! There were few more bloody holes on Zichen's body. The assassin retreated after that strike. At the same time, there were many more small wounds left by the sword light of heaven and earth. In short, Zichen no longer had an intact piece of skin on his body. Even his face was covered in wounds. In the outside world, although the crowd could not see what was happening inside, they could see the scene of the sword light piercing into the body. For a moment, everyone was stunned. The powerful Zichen, who is known to be able to kill spirits, was actually injured in the formation. Moreover, it seemed that his injuries were very serious. It's the Forbidden Killing Formation. It's known as the strongest killing formation of the Killing Clan. In history, no assassin has ever failed to kill someone using the Forbidden Killing Formation. As expected of the Forbidden Killing Formation that is known to have a 100% success rate, Zichen is definitely going to die this time. Zichen, you probably did not expect this day to come. The spirits were extremely excited. The name Zichen was like a mountain pressing down on their hearts, making them feel extremely uncomfortable and unable to raise their heads. However, as long as Zichen died, the world would become the world of invincible spirits. Looking at the trapped Zichen, Su Mengyao was very anxious. Now, She could only hope that the devil ape and the others could quickly find LV Peng. However, she soon saw the sharp blade piercing through Zichen's body. She was so shocked that she almost cried out. Her pale face was completely drained of blood. The young man stood somewhere in the void and looked down at Zichen in the formation. He said, "It's unsolvable. It's unsolvable." In the formation, Zichen's body landed on the ground. His injuries were so serious that he could not expend too much energy to fly under the pressure. Facing this forbidden killing formation, Zichen really felt powerless and felt that he was insignificant. He was very powerful and could defeat anyone in the same realm. However, this formation in front of him could exhaust him to death. Until now, he had not found a way to escape. Even if the assassins did not attack, he would die in the formation. This formation was unsolvable. Zichen could only accept this fact helplessly. "What's wrong? Are you not going to resist? Are you waiting for death?" A mocking voice sounded from the sky. Even if his tracks were exposed, Zichen did not have the strength to charge forward and kill. Because of the strangeness of the formation, he had already wasted too much energy in his previous fearless charge. This formation is unsolvable. Death is inevitable. However, I thought you would have a lot of fighting spirit and be able to hold on until the last moment. I didn't expect you to still be alive and in despair. A mocking voice sounded from the void again. Zichen looked up at somewhere in the void and said coldly, "Even if I die, I will drag you guys down with me." After a short conversation, the sword light fell again. As long as there was a breath of life in the formation, the forbidden killing formation would not end until the breath of life dissipated. At the same time, 9 assassins with sharp blades appeared along with the sword light. Facing so many attacks, Zichen did not take the initiative to resolve them. Instead, he chose to defend. The energy in his body formed a defensive light shield. Then, holding the long spear, he rushed toward one of the assassins in front of him. His expression was calm, but there was a touch of determination in his eyes. There was a trace of madness. With a flash of light, the long spear shattered a sword light and pierced into the body of one of the assassins. At the same time, the energy contained in the tip of the spear flowed into the assassin's body. At the same time, 8 sword lights broke through the defense one after another and pierced into Zichen's vital parts. However, Zichen's body was special. He could block the energy from the sharp blades in an instant. Moreover, these assassins were very careful. They were afraid that Zichen would go crazy and kill them. Therefore, they retreated after one attack. Zichen's body was bleeding profusely. Bloody holes were faintly visible. He looked very miserable and frightening. The 9 assassins retreated. Just as they hid in the void, one of them fell out and crashed to the ground, dead. Among the 9 assassins, one had already died. He is already an arrow at the end of its flight. One round of attacks will be enough to kill him. The voice in the sky sounded again. It was the leader of the 10 assassins in black. However, he did not launch an attack. He was just giving orders. Zichen did not even have time to take a deep breath. The sword lights trembled again, and the assassins attacked again. Just as the other party said, Zichen was already an arrow at the end of its flight. There was no need for the assassins to attack. These sword lights were enough to kill him. However, the assassins were not willing to let Zichen die like this. They came to kill him personally. Just as the sword lights pierced into his body again, Zichen's calm eyes suddenly lit up with 2 balls of flames. The flames burned in his eyes, in his blood, in his bones, on his body, on the assassins' blades, on the assassins' bodies, and in the endless sword lights. The entire forbidden killing formation was burning with flames. The raging flames calcined the air, ignited the endless sword lights, and ignited the assassins. Mournful screams echoed in the forbidden killing formation. However, the formation's soundproofing effect was very good. It did not spread to the outside world. However, although the people outside did not hear the screams, they saw the flames. They were familiar with this kind of flame and knew that it was called the flame of life. The power of laws appeared in the flames in the formation. The assassins' flaming figures ran around in the formation, jumping around, trying to extinguish the flames. Seeing this scene, the originally proud spirits immediately changed their expressions. Their expressions became tense, serious, worried, and even a tinge of uncontrollable fear. If the flame of life broke through the forbidden killing formation, then an unimaginable disaster would descend that would affect everyone. Su Mingyao's eyes lit up. As the battle continued, she had deduced a chance of survival. Now that she saw Zichen's heavily injured body attract the flame of life, she guessed that the chance of survival was here. However, she was not sure, so she watched excitedly. It's the annoying flame of life. Somewhere in the void, the prince's cold voice sounded. Clearly, he still remembered the scene in front of the ancient castle and was still brooding over this flame. The prince asked worriedly, "Demon Lord, will Zichen break out of the formation?" The demon lord shook his head and said, "I don't know much about human formations. However, the power of laws did not destroy the formation. The possibility of him not coming out is higher." At this moment, everyone nervously stared at the forbidden killing formation. Their expressions varied. Some were hopeful, some were worried, and some were afraid. Those who had no enmity with Zichen and those who did not like the large factions hoped that Zichen would be able to break out of the formation and then slaughter them. However, those who had enmity with him hoped that he would die in the formation. Hope filled everyone's hearts. However, there was no hope on Zichen's face. This was because the moment the flame of life was activated, a cold voice sounded from the sky. "Disperse." As the word disperse fell, the flaming sword light that filled the sky silently dispersed, turning into pure energy of the world. The flame of life could burn all external objects, but this did not include spiritual energy. Thus, the flames that filled the sky were like fireworks. As soon as they ignited, they dispersed and then disappeared. However, this was not the reason why Zichen lost hope. Instead, it was because the two assassins that had been ignited by the flame of life seemed to know that they would die. They did not hide in the space formed by the formation and instead exposed themselves to Zichen. The flame of life was unable to enter the core of the formation, so it was naturally unable to ignite there. Naturally, it was also unable to break the formation. The instant the flame of life appeared, although the formation still existed, it was not activated. Thus, the laws were unable to tear it apart. Of course, the most important reason for all of this was that Zichen was unable to control these laws. Otherwise, let alone a mere forbidden killing formation, even 10 of them would be enough to break through. The flame of life dissipated, but the forbidden killing formation still existed. The clouds that had just disappeared reappeared. Clearly, the flame of life's laws had not been able to break through the formation. This caused an uproar. The spirit bodies of the large factions let out a sigh of relief. They felt as if the mountain in their hearts had suddenly disappeared. If they had not been able to break it the first time, they naturally would not be able to break it the second time. Furthermore, whether or not Zichen would have a second chance was another matter. Su Mengyao cried out in alarm. Her face instantly paled and her eyes were filled with grief. Chapter 1098. There were more than 10,000 people in the group, and nearly a third of them had died along the way. Even so, there were still several thousand people who had successfully ascended the stairway to this world. L.V. Peng was the last to come up among these thousands of people. He had stayed on the stairway for several days, so his harvest was naturally the greatest. He had just come out, so he didn't know what earth-shattering event had happened in this world. He walked slowly comprehending the formation Tao imparted by Elder Hiroshi. This time he was extremely lucky and had encountered a great opportunity. He was even more grateful to Elder Hiroshi. Suddenly, The sound of something breaking through the air came from the horizon. A sharp voice entered LV Peng's ears. It sounded like someone was running away. He looked up at the horizon, thinking that the other party was being pursued. However, when he saw who it was, his expression immediately changed. Zhang Haotian, it's you. You're running away. Although Zhang Haotian's combat strength was inferior to Zichen's, he was definitely in existence comparable to a spirit body. Apart from Zichen, who else in this world could make him run away? LV Peng was surprised and puzzled, so he asked, "Look at you being in such a hurry. Who's chasing you?" Seeing the leisurely LV Peng, Zhang Haotian glared and said angrily, "Why are you here? Everyone's looking for you. Come with me quickly." This was the first time Zhang Haotian had glared at him since they met. His complexion instantly changed. Of course, this wasn't because Zhang Haotian was being rude, but because of his anxious expression. It was clear that something urgent had happened, something major. He hurriedly asked, "What's going on? What happened? Where's Zichen?" Zichen was their leader and their backbone, so LV Peng asked Zichen first. As long as Zichen was here, everything would be fine. Zichen's in trouble. He's about to die. In one sentence, the sky had fallen. Their backbone had fallen. Without further ado, the two went on their way. Along the way, Zhang Haotian used the fastest and most concise words to tell LV Peng what had happened. Damn it, this group of untrustworthy villains. They're a great force, yet they're going back on their words and are so shameless. LV Peng was furious. Zhang Haotian's expression was extremely cold, and his killing intent was bone-chilling. After we rescue Zichen, all the people and forces involved in this matter in this world must die. LV Peng's face was filled with anger, but he knew that it was useless to continue condemning the major powers. If condemnation could kill, who knew how many people would die every day? LV Peng's expression slowly calmed down as he asked, "Have you notified the demon ape and the others?" Zhang Haotian nodded and said, "Yes, everyone is rushing there. Su Mengyao is guarding there." LV Peng thought that they should be able to save Zichen. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked with a frown, "What kind of formation is trapping Zichen?" Although his attainments in formations are not at the Grandmaster level, he is still at the Master level. He also has the yin-yang eyes and the delusion breaker eyes of the devil ape. Can it be that the formation can't be broken even with the combination of the two? Zhang Haotian shook his head and said, "I don't know. It's a very strange array formation that was created by those assassins. The devil ape said that there are no flaws on the outside and that it has to be cracked from the inside. However, the array formation is very powerful. Zichen doesn't seem to have the time to crack it. An array formation created by an assassin." LV Peng suddenly had an ominous feeling. By the time Zhang Haotian and LV Peng arrived, the devil ape and company had already arrived. When they saw LV Peng, they surrounded him and looked at him hopefully. LV Peng had an apologetic look on his face before looking at the array in front of him. No one said a word, afraid that they would disturb LV Peng. The apologetic look on LV Peng's face dissipated as his expression slowly turned solemn. Moments later, he sighed and said, "It's forbidden to kill." Forbidden to kill. Everyone had clearly never heard of this term. It's actually forbidden to kill. These darn things. I should have guessed it long ago. The perfect body cursed. Apart from the perfect body, Ape Qilin and Ape Dragon were also there. When they heard about the forbidden killing array, their faces turned pale. This was the most powerful array formation of the Sha race. It was said to have a 100% chance of killing the enemy. From its birth until now, almost no one had broken it. It's over, it's over. The forbidden killing array formation is said to have a 100% chance of killing the enemy. It has never been broken. The three people who knew the might of the forbidden killing array had despair in their eyes. However, the others didn't know. They didn't believe it when they heard it as they looked at LV Peng. LV Peng frowned and said, "The forbidden killing array is indeed very troublesome, but to say that it has a 100% success rate and has never been broken is a little exaggerated. It's just that compared to other array formations, the forbidden killing array is relatively difficult to crack." The forbidden killing formation was a brand new term in LV Peng's mind. Before he ascended the stairway to heaven, he knew nothing about it. But on the stairway to heaven, he met Elder Mo and listened to his teachings again. Then he followed Elder Mo in the formation for dozens of years, comprehending the formation Tao. Elder Mo taught him everything he knew, and LV Peng humbly asked for advice. As for the Sha clan's famous forbidden killing formation, Elder Hiroshi had specially studied it and concluded that there was no such thing as a killing formation in this world. No matter how powerful the formation was, there would always be a chance for survival. The key was whether you could find that chance. Elder Mo didn't know how to set up the forbidden killing array because it was extremely complicated. It required many array platforms, and it wasn't something that could be completed by a single person. Although he didn't know how to set it up, Elder Mo knew how to crack it. This was because he knew where the chance of survival was through studying countless array formations. Upon hearing LV Peng's words, everyone's eyes immediately lit up. The three perfect bodies looked at LV Peng in shock and asked in shock, "LV Peng, do you really have a way to crack the array?" LV Peng looked at the array in front of him and shook his head. "This array is extraordinary. It can even trap those at the Earth Essence realm. I'm weak and can't crack it, but I can open a crack and find a chance of survival. Ziqin can use this chance to come out." Initially, everyone was in despair when they heard LV Peng's words, but his subsequent words rekindled their hope. "Then hurry up and crack the array and let Ziqin out. He has already activated the flames of life once. I'm afraid he won't be able to last much longer," Su Mingyao said anxiously. "This matter can't be rushed. We have to contact Ziqin first, then communicate with Ziqin. Other than that, we have to think of a way to approach the array." These were two extremely crucial problems. Although LV Peng could find a chance of survival, he couldn't maintain it for long. The opportunity was fleeting, so he had to let Ziqin be prepared. Other than that, the people from the large factions were still guarding the array. Everyone had to rush over. In the array, after the flames of life dissipated, the array was activated again. Ziqin was injured again. During the process, 2 more assassins died under his spear. Ziqin stood on the ground and tried his best to move in a small area to reduce his consumption. He knew that the people outside would definitely think of a way to save him. "Ziqin." Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded in Ziqin's mind. It came from Longhu. "Longhu, how is it? Do you have a way to break the array?" Ziqin's heart skipped a beat. LV Peng is looking for a chance of survival, but he's not sure where it is. He needs your cooperation. "How?" "This is a huge array with a radius of 10 miles. You need to walk to the center of the array. It's very likely that the array core is there." "Okay, I'll go now." "Be careful. Don't let anyone discover your intentions." Ziqin activated his yin-yang eyes and walked toward the center of the array. Of course, he was retreating while fighting. At the same time, he would take the initiative to launch an attack somewhere in the void. Launch an attack 30 meters away and 30 meters in the air. See what you can see. After a while, Ziqin said, "I can't see anything." 2 more meters. There's a trace. Launch an attack 40 meters behind you. 35 meters to the south. Use your yin-yang eyes when you attack. Under LV Peng's instructions, Longhu and Ziqin continued to communicate. LV Peng was outside looking for the array core, looking for a chance of survival. "Are you done?" Ziqin's voice became weak. After dodging 2 sword beams with great difficulty, Longhu's voice sounded. "Wait, it's almost done." While LV Peng was searching for a chance of survival, Zhang Haoyan and the others were discussing how to create chaos and rescue Ziqin. No, we have too few people. We're far inferior to the five-element faction. This was the voice of the perfect body. The ape dragon said, "We don't have many people from the ape lineage either, but I'll try to negotiate with the dragon man lineage. If he's willing to help with the entire demon race, our chances will be higher. There are also people from the Buddhists. I'll find Mingxin and ask them for help. Although there are quite a number of people, we're far inferior to the large factions. I'll find the fiend princess." As soon as he said that, everyone looked at Zhang Haotian in surprise. Clearly, they still remembered the scene of the fiend ape blocking the princess. If Ziqin comes out, he will definitely kill the large factions. It's beneficial to her. This woman is very smart. She should agree to our request, Zhang Haotian said. The conversation above was done via voice transmission. Immediately following that, a voice sounded in the princess's sea of consciousness. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. "Oh, you need my help." "Not just Her Highness, but all of you demons," Zhang Haotian corrected. The princess looked ahead and didn't look at Zhang Haotian. She smiled and said, "Is this considered begging me? I remember that someone previously surrounded me and took a lot of things from me." Zhang Haotian ignored her subsequent words and couldn't be bothered to explain. He said, "It's not a request, it's a cooperation. If Zichen comes out, he will definitely kill everyone from the large factions. This will only be beneficial for your upcoming trip. But Zichen is just too strong. He's even stronger than those spirit bodies. Do you think I'll release a powerful existence that's a threat to me?" Zhang Haotian cursed the woman inwardly for being cunning, but time was of the essence. He could only reply, "I guarantee that Zichen won't attack you demons after it comes out. Furthermore, if we discover anything good, we can let you have it once." "It's not letting, it's helping," the princess corrected. Although there was only one word difference, the meaning was too different. Moreover, the meaning of helping was broader, including letting. It was obviously raising the price, but Zhang Haotian could only agree. "Okay, deal." That was because, compared to Zichen's life, those worldly possessions were nothing. After discussing the details as quickly as possible, Longhu's voice was heard again. 14 meters in front of you, 13 meters high, there's a weak spot. That spot will take a lot less attacks. We'll open a gap there. Wait for my voice transmission. That's the only way to break the formation. Chapter 1099. Creating chaos was simple. It was nothing more than rushing forward. Whether it was shoving, scolding, or attacking, it was good as long as it was chaotic. However, this was on the premise that they were not afraid of the five elements forces, the sword sect, or the overlord lineage. They were one of the forces with the deepest foundation in the entire Tianwu continent. There were not many forces that dared to challenge them. Zhang Haotian contacted these forces because he was friends with Zichen and did not feel ashamed of the actions of the major forces. More importantly, the forces behind them were not afraid of the major forces. The ancient race was a major race. The demon race occupied a continent, the Buddhist sect and the five elements forces had enmity, and needless to say, the demon race was a terrifying existence that dared to invade the Tianwu continent. It was an existence that all forces feared. Chaotic footsteps were heard. The moment they moved, they became chaotic. Many cultivators from the four forces rushed forward. The energy in their bodies surged, causing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to vibrate. They moved forward aggressively. "What are you doing? What are you doing? Hurry up and retreat. Those who advance will die." Following the loud shouts, these people did not retreat. Instead, they sped up. Then both sides began to collide. They did not attack. They simply wrapped their bodies with elemental energy and collided with each other. It looked as if they were careless and did not notice the people in front of them. However, it was normal for one person not to notice. Even a ghost would not believe that a large group of more than 1,000 people did not notice them. They knew that this was just an excuse. LV Peng's arrival attracted the attention of many forces. They naturally guessed what these people were going to do. Especially when they saw so many people with poor eyesight, they were even more certain that LV Peng and his group's intention was to save Zichen. The Wu clan from the eastern continent. Zichen knew Wu Yu from that clan, and they had a good relationship. He looked at the people with poor eyesight in front of him and smiled faintly. At the same time, he spread out his spiritual senses and said, "Since it's chaotic, let's make it even more chaotic." After Wu Yu finished speaking, the group beside him was in chaos. Angry shouts and roars could be heard continuously. "Are you blind? Don't collide. F***CK. Why are you colliding blindly? Get lost. How dare you collide with me? I'll cripple you. You're not walking on the right path, but you're just randomly bumping into things. Get lost." Wu Yu's team suddenly started cursing and swearing. Then they pushed and shoved each other as they charged forward in an extremely chaotic manner. Beside Wu Yu's team was a group of dumbfounded members of the other forces. They looked at Wu Yu's team in shock, their faces filled with disbelief and, of course, confusion. It's already shameless enough that the vision of those people in front suddenly became bad. Good heavens, you people are even more shameless. You're the ones pushing forward. But you actually found such a shameless excuse. It should be known that all the forces gathered together and kept a certain distance from the other forces. In a situation where everyone was in a square formation, who would go and push your forces for no reason? Shameless, truly shameless. As soon as the four powers moved, the Wu family moved as well. This caused the expressions of the other leaders to change. Clearly, they were facing two choices at this moment. One was to wait and see, and the other was to take advantage of the chaos to create more chaos. However, at this moment, there were really too few people who could make a choice like Wu Yu. They were afraid of the wolf in front and the tiger behind, and fell into hesitation. Under these circumstances, they didn't pay attention to themselves. "Wu Yu, have your people charge at them." Suddenly, a voice rang out in Wu Yu's sea of knowledge. This time they owed Zichen a favor, and they owed the everlasting sect a favor. At this moment, they weren't resolutely watching the show and were instead hesitating. Obviously, this favor was more or less involved. When people were hesitating, they would care a lot about the opinions of the outside world. Wu Yu quickly reacted and transmitted his voice. Then his team, which was still swearing and swearing, began to charge recklessly. This charge was like a fuse that completely ignited the chaos. "You dare to push me? You're not looking where you're going? You're courting death." Explosive shouts began to ring out. Then, with everyone pushing and shoving, the teams became chaotic. In almost an instant, the forces in this area were thrown into chaos like a pot of porridge. Among them, there were some who had conflicts with the major forces, but they didn't dare to say anything. Normally, they wouldn't dare to make a move. But at this moment, since the situation was already chaotic, they didn't mind making it more chaotic. If they rescued Zichen, they would definitely gain the friendship of the everlasting sect. If they couldn't, the major forces would pursue the matter, and it could be said that it was caused by the conflict between the other forces. With this thought in mind, the teams were in complete chaos. Of course, there were also supporters of the major forces. They wanted to maintain order, but in this situation, even the major forces couldn't maintain order, let alone them. The young man looked down at the chaotic battlefield and chuckled. "Interesting, this is indeed interesting. I didn't expect to see such a chaotic battle after so many years." In another direction, the prince snorted coldly. "Humans are indeed full of thoughts. They're really shameless. Let's go." Everyone was in chaos. No one cared about LV Peng and the others anymore. They took advantage of the chaos to approach the forbidden array in front of them. During the process, LV Peng took out some array flags and handed them to everyone. At the same time, he clearly marked where the array flags should be placed. Long Hu transmitted his voice to Zichen. Let's start charging and setting up the array. Wait for my voice transmission. At this moment, Ziqin, who was in the array, was already very weak. The injuries that he had recovered from earlier were covered in wounds again. Stop right there. During the charge, a figure flashed out. It was a spirit body. They were naturally paying attention to LV Peng and the others to prevent them from destroying the forbidden array. A spirit body appeared and blocked the front. However, a golden light rushed over and the perfect body blocked the spirit body. LV Peng and the others continued charging forward. Following that, the spirit body appeared again. Ape Lin went forward to stop them. Although he didn't have the combat strength of a spirit body, he could still barely resist for a moment. After that, Ape Dragon stepped forward. After that, a Dragon Man stopped the spirit body. At that moment, the demon's attitude was very clear. They would help the Infinity Sect and save Ziqin. After that, when the spirit bodies appeared one after another, the princess also stepped forward. There was also the middle-aged demon, Buddhist Ming Xian, and the others. The spirit bodies were stopped. LV Peng and the others rushed forward and successfully arrived outside the forbidden array. The chaos in the distance suddenly intensified and turned into a battle. In the midst of the battle, there were casualties. With casualties, there was anger. The real chaotic battle had arrived. There's not much time. Start setting up the array. Zhang Haotian, go to the Kuan position. LV Peng used his spiritual senses to command. Although he had already indicated the location, he was still a little worried. Behind them, energy was vibrating. A few of them were no match for the spirit bodies, so they didn't have much time. Meng Yao, hurry up. Demonic Ape, hurry up. LV Peng anxiously commanded. Then he watched as they arrived at the designated place one by one. Then he inserted the array flags in his hand into the void. There were a total of 36 array flags inserted in 36 directions. Everyone worked together, and it only took 3 breaths. After 3 breaths, the array flags were in place. Everyone looked at LV Peng excitedly. LV Peng nodded and formed a seal with his hands. His spiritual senses connected to the array flags and activated the array. The 36 array flags began to glow and then connected together, forming a mysterious space. A misty light appeared from this space and then melted towards the forbidden array below, preparing to break the array. Everyone's expressions became more and more excited. Longhu listened quietly and waited for LV Peng's voice transmission. The misty light successfully merged into the forbidden array. LV Peng spoke, indicating for Ziqin to prepare and attack. All of a sudden, the misty light disappeared. Everyone looked up in shock and puzzlement at the sudden disappearance of the misty light. LV Peng was the same. When he looked up, he saw that the array flag had moved. The array flag was in the hands of a man in golden clothes. He was looking at LV Peng mockingly. Everyone looked at the man in golden clothes. When they saw that the array flag was taken away, they were furious and wanted to kill him. The man in golden clothes laughed. "Haha, I have been waiting for you for a long time." Following his laughter, the array flag disappeared from his hand. He had originally wanted to destroy the array flag, but how could he possibly destroy an array flag that was comparable to a spirit weapon in terms of quality? Just as Zhang Haotian and the others flew up, another person appeared in another place. He appeared out of thin air and directly appeared beside the array flag. He easily took away another array flag. Since we have the intention to kill, how can we not be prepared? This person was from the Mu family of the 5 elements. After he took away an array flag, he laughed mockingly. These 2 people were comparable to spirit bodies. Previously, they had been hiding in the dark and only made their move now. However, what puzzled LV Peng and the others was that when the devil ape used its delusion breaker eye, it did not find anyone hiding in the surroundings. The light continued to flash and another person appeared. Then, one figure after another appeared beside the array flag. LV Peng's pupils shrank. He finally saw where the other party appeared from. It was actually from the Forbidden Ants array. They had been hiding in the array to avoid the Devil Ape's Delusion Breaker eye. At this moment, because the array flag was attached to the killing array, they could appear in front of the array flag at any time and easily take it away. Moreover, their speed was very fast. With the help of the array, their speed was like teleportation. Zhang Haoyan and the others could not kill them at all. In just a few breaths, all 36 array flags were taken away by them. Haha, without the array flags, let's see how you break the array. Moreover, Zichen is about to die. These spirits laughed out loud. Their figures flashed, and they entered the array once again. This was a space that was deliberately prepared for them in the forbidden killing array. Although they didn't believe that LV Peng could break the array, they did so just in case. However, they did not expect LV Peng to have such means. Without the array flags, the killing array could not be broken. LV Peng was in despair. These people re-entered the array and could not kill. Zhang Haoyan and the others were in despair. There's not much time left. Let's just watch Zichen die. A cold, mocking, and venomous voice rang out, and everyone's gazes turned toward Zichen. Countless sword rain rushed towards Zichen. At the same time, several assassins also launched fatal attacks. Zichen was extremely weak and had reached the limit of his life. However, the flame of life did not appear. Even people who have an immortal body will die, let alone the flame of life. The flame of life is not invincible. No one can be immortal. The voice of the demon lord sounded. It seemed that he had foreseen Zichen's end. Chapter 1100. Creating chaos was really simple. It was nothing more than rushing forward. Regardless of whether it was shoving, scolding, or attacking, as long as it was chaotic, it was good. However, they had to be unafraid of the 5 elements forces, the Sword Sect, and the Overlord lineage. They were considered one of the most powerful forces in the Tianwu continent. There were not many forces that dared to challenge them. Zhang Haoyan had contacted them because of his friendship with Zichen. He did not feel ashamed of the actions of the major forces. More importantly, the forces behind them were not afraid of the major forces. The ancient race was a major race. The demon race occupied a continent. The Buddhist sect had a grudge with the 5 elements forces. Needless to say, the demon race was a terrifying existence that dared to invade the Tianwu continent. All the forces had to be wary of them. The sound of chaotic footsteps could be heard. Many cultivators from the 4 forces rushed forward. The energy in their bodies surged, causing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to vibrate. They moved forward aggressively. What are you doing? What are you doing? Hurry up and retreat. Those who advance will die. Following the roars, these people did not retreat. Instead, they sped up. Then both sides began to collide. They did not attack. They simply wrapped their bodies with elemental energy and collided with each other. It looked as if they were careless and did not notice the people in front of them. However, it was normal for one person not to notice. Even a ghost would not believe that a large group of more than 1,000 people did not notice them. They knew that this was just an excuse. LV Peng's arrival attracted the attention of many forces. They naturally guessed what these people were going to do. Especially when they saw so many people with poor eyesight, they were even more certain that LV Peng and his group's intention was to save Zichen. The Wu clan from the eastern continent. Zichen knew Wu Yu from that clan, and they had a good relationship. He looked at the people with poor eyesight in front of him and smiled faintly. At the same time, he spread out his spiritual senses and said, "Since it's chaotic, let's make it even more chaotic." After Wu Yu finished speaking, the group beside him was in chaos. Angry shouts and roars could be heard continuously. Are you blind? Don't collide. F***CK. Why are you colliding blindly? Get lost. If you dare to collide with me, I'll cripple you. You're not walking on the right path, but you're just randomly bumping into things. Get lost. Wu Yu's team suddenly started cursing and swearing. Then they pushed and shoved each other as they charged forward in an extremely chaotic manner. Beside Wu Yu's team was a group of dumbfounded members of the other forces. They looked at Wu Yu's team in shock, their faces filled with disbelief and, of course, confusion. It's already shameless enough that the vision of those people in front suddenly became bad. Good heavens, you people are even more shameless. You're the ones pushing forward. But you actually found such a shameless excuse. It should be known that all the forces gathered together and kept a certain distance from the other forces. In a situation where everyone was in a square formation, who would go and push your forces for no reason. Shameless, truly shameless. As soon as the four powers moved, the Wu family moved as well. This caused the expressions of the other leaders to change. Clearly, they were facing two choices at this moment. One was to wait and see, and the other was to take advantage of the chaos to create more chaos. However, at this moment, there were really too few people who could make a choice like Wu Yu. They were afraid of the wolf in front and the tiger behind, and fell into hesitation. Under these circumstances, they already didn't know what to do. Wu Yu, have your people charge at them. Suddenly, a voice rang out in Wu Yu's sea of knowledge. During this trip, they owed Zichen a debt of gratitude, and they owed the everlasting sect a favor. At this moment, they weren't resolutely watching the show and were instead hesitating. Obviously, this debt of gratitude was more or less involved. When people were hesitating, they would care a lot about the opinions of the outside world. Wu Yu quickly reacted and transmitted his voice. Then his team, which was still swearing and swearing, began to charge recklessly. This charge was like a fuse that completely ignited the chaos. You dare to push me? You're not looking where you're going? You're courting death. Explosive shouts began to ring out. Then, with everyone pushing and shoving, the teams became chaotic. In almost an instant, the forces in this area were like a pot of porridge. Among them, there were some who had conflicts with the major forces, but they didn't dare to say anything. Normally, they wouldn't dare to make a move, but at this moment, since the situation was already chaotic, they didn't mind making it even more chaotic. If they saved Zichen, they would definitely gain the friendship of the everlasting sect. If they couldn't save him, the major forces would pursue the matter, and it could be said that it was caused by the conflict between the other forces. It was with this thought that the team was in complete chaos. Of course, there were also supporters of the major forces. They wanted to maintain order, but in this situation, even the major forces couldn't maintain order, let alone them. The young man looked down at the chaotic battlefield below and chuckled. Interesting, it's really interesting. I didn't expect to see such a chaotic battle after so many years. In another direction, the prince snorted coldly. Humans are indeed scheming. They're really shameless. Let's go. Everyone was in chaos. No one cared about LV Peng and the others anymore. They took advantage of the chaos and approached the forbidden killing array. During the process, LV Peng took out some array flags and handed them to everyone. At the same time, he clearly marked where the array flags should be placed. Long Hu transmitted his voice to Zichen. Let's start charging and setting up the array. Wait for my voice transmission. At this moment, Zichen, who was in the array, was already very weak. The injuries that he had recovered from earlier were covered in wounds again. Stop right there. While charging forward, a figure flashed out. It was a spirit body. They were naturally paying attention to LV Peng and the others to prevent them from destroying the forbidden killing array. A spirit body appeared and blocked in front, but then a golden light rushed over and the perfect body blocked the spirit body. LV Peng and the others continued to charge forward. Immediately after, the spirit body appeared again. Ape Lin went forward to stop them. Although he didn't have the combat strength of a spirit body, he could still barely resist for a moment. Then, Ape Dragon stepped forward. After that, a dragon man stopped the spirit body. At this moment, the attitude of the demons was very clear. They would help the Wuji sect and save Zichen. After that, when the spirit bodies appeared one after another, the princess also stepped forward. There was also the middle-aged demon, Buddhist Ming Xian, and the others. The spirit bodies were stopped. LV Peng and the others rushed forward and successfully arrived outside the forbidden killing array. The chaos in the distance suddenly intensified and turned into a battle. In the midst of the battle, there were casualties. With casualties, there was anger. The real chaotic battle had arrived. There's not much time. Start setting up the array. Zhang Haotian, go to the Kuan position. LV Peng used his spiritual sense to command. Although he had already indicated the location, he was still a little worried. Behind them, energy was vibrating. A few of them were no match for the spirit bodies, so they didn't have much time. Meng Yao, hurry up. Demonic ape, hurry up. LV Peng anxiously commanded. Then he watched as they arrived at the designated place one by one. Then he inserted the array flags in his hand into the void. There were a total of 36 array flags in 36 directions. Everyone worked together, and it only took 3 breaths. After 3 breaths, the array flags were in place. Everyone looked at LV Peng excitedly. LV Peng nodded and formed a seal with his hands. His spiritual sense connected to the array flags and activated the array. The 36 array flags began to glow and then connected together, forming a mysterious space. A misty light appeared from this space and then melted towards the forbidden killing array below, preparing to break the array. Everyone's expressions became more and more excited. Longhu listened quietly and waited for LV Peng's voice transmission. The misty light successfully merged into the forbidden killing array. LV Peng spoke, indicating for Zichen to prepare and attack. All of a sudden, the misty light disappeared. Everyone looked up in shock and puzzlement at the sudden disappearance of the misty light. LV Peng was the same. When he looked up, he saw that the array flag had moved. The array flag was in the hands of a man in golden clothes. He was looking at LV Peng mockingly. Everyone looked at the man in golden clothes. When they saw that the array flag was taken away, they were furious and wanted to kill him. The man in golden clothes began to laugh. "Haha, I have been waiting for you for a long time." As his laughter faded away, the array flag disappeared from his hand. He had originally wanted to destroy the array flag, but how could he possibly destroy an array flag that was comparable to a spirit weapon in terms of quality? Zhang Haotian and the others just flew up when another person appeared in another place. He appeared out of thin air and directly appeared beside the array flag. He easily took another array flag. Since we have the intention to kill, how can we not be prepared? This person was from the Mu family of the 5 elements. After he took away an array flag, he also laughed mockingly. These 2 people were comparable to spirit bodies. Previously, they had been hiding in the dark, and only now did they make a move. However, what puzzled LV Peng and the others was that when the devil ape looked around with its delusion breaker eyes, it did not find anyone hiding in the surroundings. The light continued to flash, and another person appeared. Then, one figure after another appeared beside the array flags. LV Peng's pupils shrank. He finally saw where the other party appeared from. It was actually from the forbidden killing array. They had been hiding in the array all this time to avoid the devil ape's delusion breaker eyes. At this moment, because the array flags were attached to the killing array, they could appear in front of the array flags at any time and easily take them away. Moreover, they were very fast. With the help of the array, their speed was like teleportation. Zhang Haotian and the others could not kill them at all. In just a few breaths, all 36 array flags were taken away by them. Haha, without the array flags, let's see how you break the array. Moreover, Zichen is going to die soon. These spirit bodies laughed out loud. Their figures flashed, and they entered the array once more. This was a space that the forbidden killing array had deliberately prepared for them. Although they didn't believe that LV Peng could break the array, they did so just in case. However, they did not expect LV Peng to have such means. Without the array flags, the killing array could not be broken. LV Peng was in despair. These people re-entered the array and could not kill. Zhang Haotian and the others were also in despair. There's not much time left. Let's just watch Zichen die. A cold, mocking, and venomous voice rang out, and everyone's gaze turned towards Zichen. Countless sword rain rushed towards Zichen. At the same time, several assassins also launched fatal attacks. Zichen was extremely weak and had reached the limit of his life. However, the flame of life did not appear. Even people who have cultivated an immortal body will die, let alone the flame of life. The flame of life is not invincible. No one can be immortal. The demon lord's voice sounded. It seemed that he had foreseen Zichen's end. Thousands of swordlight shot towards Zichen. Several sharp blades pierced into Zichen's body. Chapter 1101. The chaos continued and the battle was still intense, but everyone deliberately released a trace of spiritual sense outside the forbidden killing array. The array flags were taken away one by one. The strange spiritual bodies appeared and disappeared, and the despair on the faces of LV Peng and the others showed that the rescue plan had completely failed. Now, Zichen only had one path left, and that was death. The chaotic battle stopped almost instantly. Everyone turned around at this moment and looked at the array in front of them, at Zichen in the middle of the array. They saw thousands of sword lights and a few sharp blades that contained fierce, killing intent. Then they saw thousands of sword lights fall on Zichen and penetrate Zichen's body. They saw the sharp blades pierce Zichen's body and completely mince Zichen's body. Dazzling sparks burst out from the formation, and Zichen's body was pulverized under everyone's gazes. There was an uproar all around, followed by mournful and desperate screams and proud laughter. Zichen, who was extremely strong, had died in front of the crowd. However, they weren't astonished by the strength of the forbidden killing technique because it was too late. At that moment, they were sighing, happy, angry, and sad. The strongest person of the same level died, just like that. The strongest person of the same level disappeared, just like that. The expressions of the thousands of people present could be divided into 4 types. One was the sighing of the neutral. The other was the jealousy and pride of the neutral, the grief and indignation of Su Mengyao and the others, and the excitement of the spiritual bodies of the major forces. In the sky, the young man was still smiling faintly. Interesting, really interesting. In another direction, the cold snort of the demon venerable was heard. Zichen died just like that. Wasn't he a miracle creator? Would he also create a miracle this time? Some people could not accept this reality and could not help but think. Then they subconsciously looked at the array. With just a glance, his expression was a little sluggish. His eyes were wide open, and his face was full of shock and disbelief. Then he let out a cry of surprise. It was unknown whether this cry of surprise had an effect or if others had also discovered this strange scene. But soon, cries of surprise sounded one after another. Then there were more cries of surprise. Flames, that's flames, the flames of life. Zichen is not dead. Alive. Zichen is still alive. Amidst the cries of alarm, Su Mengyao, who was kneeling on the ground, lifted her head in a daze. Her face was full of tears, and her soulless eyes looked towards the killing array in front of her. Gradually, her eyes regained their luster. At this moment, she was not performing a divination. If she had, she would have discovered that the light that represented Zichen's vitality was now as bright as the sun. Zhang Haotian and the others lowered their heads. Their faces were filled with regret, pride, and self-blame. They believed that they had a lot to do with Zichen's death, and that they couldn't shirk the responsibility. Hearing the cries of surprise, they raised their heads in confusion and looked ahead. The negative emotions on their faces disappeared and were replaced by excitement. Flames. At this moment, the killing array was filled with endless flames. This was the fire of life that everyone was extremely familiar with. At this moment, the flame of life was no longer just burning within the formation like before. Instead, it was igniting the entire formation. The entire formation was engulfed in flames. The power of law contained in the flames flowed into the center of the formation, and then to the formation platforms, which then collapsed. A few explosions suddenly came from the burning formation. Then the complete forbidden killing formation completely shattered. The forbidden killing formation was broken just like that. But no one knew why such a perfectly fine formation would be broken just like that. Mournful cries rang out. Those were the cries of the assassins who had been ignited. The pain of having their vitality ignited was something that even the devil sovereigns couldn't endure, let alone them. Princess looked ahead, her beautiful eyes flashing. She muttered in disbelief, "You can even break the formation like that? Are you really undying? But are you really still alive?" At this moment, there were others who had the same question as her. After all, they had personally seen Zichen die. Although the flame of life had appeared now, perhaps it had only appeared after Zichen's death. Is Zichen really still alive? Everyone looked at the formation, thinking the same thing. You dare call it the flame of life? If you can't even save a single person, how can it be called the flame of life? The youth in the air jokingly replied, but unfortunately no one could hear him. At this moment, everyone's attention was on the formation. They didn't notice that above the formation, there was a burning, human-shaped flame. In the flame, Zichen stood indifferently. His eyes swept around, looking at everyone's expressions. A murderous intent rose from the bottom of his heart. Today he was going to start a massacre. Under Zichen's feet, the formation was burned to ashes in the flame. Several figures were revealed. Only one of them was an assassin. The rest were the spirits who stayed in the independent space. At this moment, their faces were filled with confusion. They didn't understand. They had clearly seen Zichen die. How could he still trigger the flame of life? The spirits didn't understand. Little did they know that the surviving black-robed man was even more confused. Why would the flame of life burn the center of the formation? In short, whether they understood it or not, everything happened just like that. The formation was broken and the flame had disappeared, but they still felt a scorching heat. The heat came from above their heads. As they looked up, they saw a human-shaped flame in the air. Zichen, it's Zichen. Zichen, he's really still alive. He's created another miracle. Exclamations rang out again. They had already forgotten how many times they had exclaimed in such a short period of time. In short, when they saw the figure in the flame, most of them became excited. Their blood surged and they became impassioned. This was because if Zichen was still alive, then some of them would die. They would be unlucky. After confirming that the person in the flames was Zichen, the few spiritual bodies decided to retreat without any hesitation. Of course, retreating was only what they thought in their hearts. In reality, in everyone's eyes, this was fleeing, and it was the most miserable kind. It's too late to run now. Zichen's cold voice came from the flame. Then, with a whoosh, for lightning wings appeared on Zichen's back. With a flash of fire, Zichen's figure disappeared from where he was. When he reappeared in the next moment, he was already beside the few spirit bodies. He didn't need to show any killing intent. He only needed to throw a few simple punches. Wherever the wind from the punch passed, the spirits burned. Under the burning flames, their bodies seemed to be made of ice. They actually began to melt. Shrill screams echoed between heaven and earth. Don't let them escape. Kill them. Zichen's cold voice, filled with killing intent, rang out in the air. He immediately charged towards the fleeing assassin. He was the only one of the 10 who was still alive. When the demon ape and the others saw that Zichen was still alive, they were indescribably excited. When they heard Zichen's words, they didn't even think before charging towards the major factions. At this moment, it didn't matter who they killed. The most important thing was to kill. They needed to vent. They needed to kill. Therefore, the demon ape and the others charged towards the ordinary origin realm cultivators of the major factions and began a frenzied slaughter. His originally 2-meter-tall figure suddenly became incomparably tall, like a small mountain. The black rod in his hand also enlarged in the next moment. Then he gripped the black rod tightly and suddenly swept it forward. Bang, 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 bang. Wherever the black staff passed, more than 10 mortal origin realm cultivators were blasted apart by the demon ape. Blood rained down from the sky. Apart from the demon ape, Longhu also showed his might. A tall phantom appeared behind him. As Longhu moved, the phantom extended a claw forward. There was a terrifying force vibrating from the claw. This force enveloped many people below. As the claw landed, these people's bodies were crushed. Zhang Haoqin hid in the dark like a killer. As his figure appeared, a stream of sword aura would appear and take away the lives of many people. When the slaughter began, the few of them became extremely crazy. Even Su Mingyao's expression was cold as she charged towards the mortal origin realm cultivators of the major factions. Kill! Kill these scum! The perfect body shouted as he commanded the ancients to attack. The ancients didn't have a harmonious relationship with the major factions, so they didn't feel any burden when they attacked. Amitabha, this penniless monk is repaying some interest for the destruction of the Buddhist sect. Ming Xian led the few Buddhist disciples and charged towards the Jin family. They didn't have many people, but they all grasped the power of mantra. Their combat strength couldn't be underestimated. The more chaotic the situation, the more interesting it will be. Let's attack too. The princess waved her hand. The demons that had gathered together earlier dispersed and charged towards the 5 Elements faction to begin the slaughter. Zichen chased after the fleeing assassin. The flames of life around him slowly dimmed and disappeared after his injuries healed. Die. With the yin-yang eye and world speed, the assassin naturally couldn't escape. After Zichen caught up, he waved the spear in his hand and stabbed at the assassin. The assassin blocked with his sharp blade. As the 2 weapons clashed, clanging sounds rang out and sparks flew. Amidst the high-frequency vibrations, the assassin's body began to retreat. One retreated while the other advanced, approaching the battlefield once again. At this moment, the assassin's face was no longer calm. It was filled with panic. The concealment technique he was most proud of was nothing in front of Zichen. It could be said that he had lost his greatest reliance. In a head-on clash, he was even less of a match for Zichen. At this moment, he was already injured as the corners of his mouth began to bleed. He couldn't escape or fight. The assassin's final fate was already decided. As for Zichen, he became more and more ruthless and crazy as he fought. Uft. In the end, the assassin's body was pierced through by Zichen's spear. Then the assassin was lifted up. As for his vitality, it was instantly destroyed. The Dragon Soul Spear was still absorbing the lightning in the Sea of Lightning to evolve. Zichen was now very comfortable using the flaming spear. As the spear in his hand trembled, the assassin's body exploded. A rain of blood fell from the sky, landing on Zichen before landing on the ground. Chapter 11:02. This was a chaotic battle between the major factions. Only the major factions that had no scruples would dare to participate. The other factions did not want to participate in a battle of this level because it was meaningless and would only cause trouble later. However, as soon as the battle began, the energy began to fluctuate. The other factions did not have time to retreat, and some were shaken by the energy or accidentally injured. At this time, if one of the cultivators lost their rationality and retaliated verbally or physically, it would probably cause another round of chaos. For example, if a spirit wanted to chase after the demon ape because it was too fast and someone was in its way, it would simply slap them to death. It was a very simple matter. And it just so happened that this was a faction that had a conflict with a major faction or had a deep grudge against a major faction. Obviously, this was another fuse. Because of various reasons, the fuses were ignited one after another, and the battle below turned into another chaotic battle. However, unlike the previous chaotic battle, this one was more intense because everyone was fighting with hatred. Energy fluctuated, and the sound of weapons stabbing into bodies could be heard continuously. Cultivators fell one after another, and the ground was soon dyed red with blood. A strong smell of blood drifted in this world. Looking at the bloody battlefield below, the prince asked respectfully, "Demon Sovereign, this is the reason why you saved Zichen." LV Peng's formation flag was taken away, and the plan to save Zichen was declared a failure. Although Zichen once again attracted the flame of life at the crucial moment, the assassins had already experienced it once. So how could they make a mistake? The real reason why the flame of life could break the formation was that a trace of an inexplicable power in this world had entered the formation. It did not destroy the formation, but like a fuse, it extended from the center of the formation to Zichen's body. As a result, the flame of life was activated and the fuse was ignited. Like a fuse, it extended all the way to the center of the formation. And then the formation broke. The demon sovereign smiled and said, "We need to increase our strength as quickly as possible, so we have to devour these life forces. Since we're already here, the possibility of them killing us is too small. So we released Zichen and let him and his companions, who are full of hatred, kill crazily. I have to say, Zichen and his companions are very strong, but I originally thought that they would just kill each other. I didn't expect that they would cause such a chaotic battle. I have to say, these forces are really unpopular." The prince said worriedly, "But if we release Zichen, will it affect our plan?" Hearing this, the demon lord suddenly laughed out loud as if he had just heard the funniest joke in the world. After laughing for a long time, the smile on his face disappeared and turned into a look of disdain. "I only need one finger to kill Zichen." When the prince heard this, he couldn't help but have a look of admiration on his face. Just by using a trace of his power, he was able to maximize his benefits. As expected of the demon lord who had lived for countless years, the flames of life didn't last long, or rather, it wasn't as long as Zichen had imagined. The spiritual bodies that the major factions had deliberately hidden were only heavily injured and not dead. When they met Zichen's cold gaze, their hearts couldn't help but tremble. They weren't a match for him even when they were at their peak, let alone now. The previously arrogant Jin family spiritual body now had a trace of fear on his face. He looked at Zichen and said in a trembling voice, "Zichen, you dare to kill us?" Zichen stood there with his spear in hand. When he heard this, a mocking sneer appeared on his face. He said mockingly, "At this time, do you think there's any point in talking nonsense? If you don't die, I will feel very uncomfortable. If all of you don't die, I will be very unhappy." Their expressions changed. Another spiritual body said, "Zichen, you have to think carefully. We are the largest faction in the Tianwu continent." As expected, Zichen seriously thought about it. He said, "When you worked together to scheme against me, I had already thought it through. I felt that I was too naive in the past. You said to make peace, so I only made peace. Furthermore, I only asked for a few spirit weapons. I think, in order to kill me, you must have paid the Shah clan a lot more." Ignoring their pale and frightened faces, Zichen said, "That's why I felt that I was very stupid in the past. I was very cowardly, very afraid of things. I always thought about the big picture, but in exchange, I was hunted down time and time again. I could escape once, but I couldn't escape all the assassinations. So I decided to fight to the death with you. I won't compromise anymore. I won't let myself be wronged, and I won't let you have an easy time." Zichen had already made up his mind to kill, but the spirit bodies were still unwilling to give up. They wanted to make a final struggle. Let us go, and we'll forget about our grudges. This time, we'll do what we said. Zichen smiled and said, Perhaps what you are saying now is the truth. However, this is on the premise that your lives are in my hands. If I let you go, you will still scheme against me with a strong backer. We won't, we promise. Your promise, in my eyes, is not even worth a pile of shit. Not to mention you. Even if your parents and elders promise, it is just a fart in my eyes. As his voice fell, the spear in Zichen's hand pierced forward. This stab contained 100% of Zichen's strength. Around the flaming spear, the space trembled as a powerful force gushed out from the tip of the spear. The target of the stab was the spiritual body of the Jin clan. He shouted loudly and mobilized the golden essence force in his body to form a golden shield in front of him. At the same time, layers of light barriers appeared around his body. The spear pierced the golden shield, shattering it instantly. Then, the spear's power did not diminish. It easily pierced through the spiritual body of the Jin clan's spiritual body's defensive light barrier and directly pierced his heart. Just like when he was facing the enemy assassin, the spiritual body of the Jin clan's spiritual body was lifted up by Zichen's spear. With a shake of his wrist, the spiritual body of the Jin clan's spiritual body suddenly exploded. One strike killed a spiritual body. As for the other spiritual bodies, they began to flee. They naturally knew that Zichen had extreme speed. Fleeing would only lead to death. The only correct choice was to join forces and attack. However, there were a total of 7 of them. They were not sure if the 7 of them would use their full strength at the same time. They were also not sure if one of them would take the opportunity to escape. All kinds of distrust made them give up the most correct choice and flee. The reason for their escape was that they were lucky. They were lucky that Zichen would not chase after them and would chase after the others and kill them. It was this luck that allowed them to escape. However, they seemed to have forgotten that this world was only so big. There was no exit, so where could they run to? The correct answer was that they could not run anywhere because they could not escape at all. They were so heavily injured that they could not even block one strike from Zichen. Therefore, when faced with Zichen's attack, they only had one path, death. The spear pierced through the body of the second spiritual body. Then it lifted him up. With a shake, the spiritual body exploded and a rain of blood fell. Zichen's body was already covered in blood. There were pieces of flesh on his shoulders and hair. He looked extremely ferocious, like a demon that had walked out of hell. He represented death. Wherever his body landed, a spiritual body would inevitably die. The spiritual bodies were said to be invincible. They were legendary existences. Today, they were cut down one by Zichen like cabbages. It was very easy. The few spiritual bodies who were heavily injured died very quickly. Then, it was the other spiritual bodies who were restrained and could not escape in time. These people faced Zichen. Although they had the ability to fight back, their fates were the same in the end. One by one, the spiritual bodies fell in front of Zichen. As the spiritual bodies were destroyed, the people of the major forces kept dying. The blood on the ground seeped into the ground, and then turned into a torrent of life that flowed towards a certain place in the world. There, 2 demon sovereigns sat cross-legged, dividing the 2 torrents into 2. The prince and the demon stood on both sides to protect them. However, this kind of protection was meaningless. The demon sovereigns were 100% sure that their arrival did not attract anyone's attention. However, they did not know that there was a pair of eyes in the dark staring at them. Those eyes were full of ridicule and mockery. It's really meaningless to go in such a big circle. It's meaningless. It's meaningless. In the void, the young man's muttering voice sounded. Because they wanted to completely destroy the enemy, this massacre lasted for a very long time. All the people who escaped were chased down by the demon ape and Zhang Haoyan. As for the spiritual bodies, they were left to Zichen. After LV Peng took out his own array flag, the speed of his slaughter sped up. Moreover, he smoothly climbed to first place. He was the fastest to kill the most people. If Zichen was displaying his individual combat strength to the world, shocking everyone, then LV Peng was displaying the mass-killing power of an array master, causing everyone's hearts to palpitate. After a long, long time, the battle finally came to an end. The blue sky turned red, and a bloody mist floated in the air. On the ground, blood flowed like a sea. Severed limbs floated in the air, and corpses floated in the air. The thick smell of blood in the air caused many people to feel uncomfortable. Afterwards, the speed at which they cleaned up the battlefield slowed down a great deal. This time, everyone had contributed. So, as they cleaned up the battlefield, the spirit-devouring rats only took away the spiritual body's spirit rings and their spiritual weapons. As for the spiritual rings of the other cultivators, the spirit-devouring rats didn't touch them. Instead, they gave them to the other factions. Zichen stood in the air. The blood on his body had long since disappeared. He wore a new set of robes and had already returned to his original appearance. But as everyone looked at him, they couldn't help but recall the scene of him killing the spiritual bodies. Moreover, no matter how they looked at it, Zichen looked like a demon. Even the true demon race hid far away after witnessing Zichen's slaughter. Compared to them, Zichen was more like a demon. After the battlefield was cleaned up, everyone left. Afterwards, Zichen thanked them one by one. Next, they searched for heavenly beasts to kill in this world. They were searching for the opportunity that the young man had mentioned. After searching for several days, they found nothing. Just as Zichen was wondering if the young man was lying, the spirit-devouring rats suddenly sent him a sound transmission. They had discovered something, and it was a huge discovery. Chapter 11:03. In the depths of the world, many cultivators had already gathered. In front of these cultivators was a passage. They stood in front of the passage and didn't enter, clearly hesitant. The spirit-devouring rat stood behind the crowd, furtively looking at the passage in front of it. Its small eyes darted around, no one knowing what it was thinking. It had already sent out a signal. All it needed to do, now, was wait for Zichen's group to arrive. A voice suddenly sounded from behind the spirit-devouring rat. "Did you discover something?" This was an unfamiliar voice. At the very least, this was the case for the spirit-devouring rat. It turned its head and saw a beautiful and arrogant woman walking towards it. As for this woman, she was riding on an extraordinarily mighty black beast. Its small eyes glanced at the princess before withdrawing. Then, the spirit-devouring rat chose to remain silent. "Did you discover something?" the princess asked again. She seemed to be unwilling to give up. The spirit-devouring rat said, "Isn't it obvious? This is a passage. Enter the passage and reach the second level." "Is that so? Then why don't you enter? Can't you see that I'm waiting for someone?" The spirit-devouring rat asked in return. Then it deliberately increased the distance between them. The princess of the demon race. What kind of noble status was this? Many people wanted to get close to her, but the spirit-devouring rat was deliberately avoiding her. The princess looked at the spirit-devouring rat in the distance and couldn't help but smile. The spirit-devouring rat is an existence born to seek treasures, but now it's sneaking around. I'd be the one to believe you. Footsteps sounded and the middle-aged demon walked over. "Your Highness, how is it?" The princess said, "There's a problem with the spirit-devouring rat." The middle-aged demon pondered. "Your Highness means that there's a problem with this passage. Since many people feel that there's a problem with this passage, then there's naturally a problem. Then what do we do? Wait. Wait for Zichen's group to arrive. That's right. Don't forget, he still owes us a favor." But this matter is of great importance, and there might be some great opportunity. What if they don't keep their promise? Zichen is a very interesting fellow. He didn't try to kill me back then, let alone a promise. The middle-aged demon frowned, but didn't say anything. If Zichen had made a move in the blazing ancient castle, the one who would have died would have been Zichen. When the passageway appeared in front of them, no matter what, after everyone discovered it, the first thing they should do was to enter. In fact, quite a number of people had entered, but they never returned. However, this was also very normal. It was possible that after entering the next level, they would all go in search of treasures. Who would be so foolish as to come back? However, even though this was an extremely normal thing, many people felt that it was extremely abnormal. Thus, they looked at the passageway from afar and stopped moving forward. Zichen and the others rushed over and saw the tunnel in the distance. When they saw the humans, they asked curiously, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong with that tunnel?" "There's no problem. They just have to go in. But they just don't want to," the spirit-devouring rat said in an extremely natural manner. His words were filled with thick ridicule and disdain. However, behind this tone, there was an extremely obscure sound transmission. That is not the real passage. It seems to be the passage to leave. However, there is another strange place here. It is very obscure, but I can feel its existence. Zichen smiled and said, "In that case, let's go in." "All right, let's go now," the spirit-devouring rat said. The two of them were conversing with words. No matter how soft their voices were, it would still be heard by most people. Hearing the spirit-devouring rat's affirmation, some people who were hesitating no longer hesitated. They immediately made up their minds and stepped into the passageway. After entering the passageway, they felt their vision blur as if they had stepped into some kind of teleportation array. When they appeared again, they saw a huge black ancient castle in front of them. The black ancient castle was incomparably huge and exuded an ancient aura. It was extremely extraordinary. Everyone's expression immediately became excited, thinking that they had arrived at some kind of treasure land. However, this treasure land seemed to be somewhat familiar. This place looks very familiar. Yes, it is very familiar. Some people sighed and some people agreed. Then everyone recalled where they had seen this ancient castle before and looked around at the same time. The surroundings were a mess. The ground was bumpy and there were dried bloodstains in many places. It was as if some kind of great battle had occurred. Seeing that the surroundings were becoming more and more familiar, everyone's expression changed drastically. One of them shouted angrily, "Spirit-devouring rat, you **king liar." What kind of treasure land was this? It was clearly the entrance to the saint burial ground. Hearing the curses, laughter came from the distance. There were many cultivators standing together. They had all come out earlier. Zichen and the others naturally wouldn't really go in. Just now it was just an act. However, it seemed that their acting wasn't very realistic. They only managed to trick a few people into going in. The others didn't move. These people's attention was all on Zichen. Obviously, they had the idea that if you go in, we will go in too. Zichen and the others had already walked to the front of the passageway and were about to go in. Suddenly a voice sounded, "Zichen, we found a lot of heavenly beasts." Heavenly beasts. Zichen frowned slightly. He looked into the distance and then looked at the passageway in front of him. He seemed to be hesitant. What did heavenly beasts mean? Everyone naturally knew. Each heavenly beast represented a spirit weapon. As the sect leader of a large sect, Zichen's hesitation was also very reasonable. "Wait for me here. I'll be back soon." Finally, Zichen made up his mind quickly, showing the courage that a sect leader should have. Zichen's figure flew up. Beside him, Su Mengyao looked at the people around and frowned slightly. She seemed to be extremely unhappy and said, "If you want to go, let's go together." She followed Zichen closely. The spirit-devouring rat sighed softly and then followed. How can you leave me here alone? Longhu also flew up. As for Zhang Haotian, he had already disappeared. Ziqin and the others left just like that. Everyone was dumbfounded, not knowing how to deal with the situation in front of them. They stopped in their tracks, afraid that the other place was really a treasure land. If they entered late, it would greatly affect their harvest. Everyone's gaze fell on their leaders almost instantly, waiting for them to make a decision. What should we do? The ancient looked at the perfect body and asked. The perfect body frowned and pondered. His expression was unfathomable, but he didn't say anything. Senior brother, are we going in or not? A Buddhist disciple asked Ming Xan. Amitba. Ming Xian pressed his palms together and chanted a Buddhist proclamation. After that, his mouth kept opening and closing, but no sound came out. We'll just follow benefactor, Ziqin. Follow Ziqin. But senior brother, Ziqin hasn't entered yet. What if the harvest inside is gone? Junior brother, do you know who's the strongest here? Of course it's Ziqin. Whose team is the strongest? That's hard to say, but if we really fight, it'll be Ziqin's team. Junior brother, you still don't understand. Senior brother, you mean that since Ziqin isn't in a hurry, we shouldn't be. What I mean is that there's something strange about this passage. But Ziqin didn't enter. Between the questions and answers, Ming Xian dispelled everyone's doubts. It had to be said that although this monk didn't look very good, his mind was very clear. Of course, this was only a voice transmission. Your acting is quite realistic, but I don't know how long you'll be able to kill the heavenly beasts. The princess smiled coldly, signaling the demons to stay put. In the field there were demons with minds like demons. As for the others, they might not be smart enough, or they might be a little stupid. But as long as they weren't really stupid, they naturally wouldn't go in when no one else was going in. They were waiting for Ziqin to return from killing the heavenly beasts. However, in this world, with so many people here for so long, how could there be so many heavenly beasts for Ziqin to kill? The group walked around, but they didn't see a single heavenly beast. Searching aimlessly was very boring, so they could only stop and count their gains. Now they all had spirit weapons, and there was nothing in the world that could attract them. However, they were counting their gains. How boring was that? My acting just now was not bad, right? The spirit-devouring rat found a shiny gem, swallowed it in one gulp, and then showed off. Ziqin thought for a moment, nodded solemnly, and then said, Not bad, but my cooperation was flawless. That's right, if you and I work together, we'll naturally be able to deceive those fools. After a while, when they're all gone, we'll go look for treasures. As if it was too proud, it caused a lot of dissatisfaction. The spirit-devouring rat hurriedly said, Of course, everyone's superb acting skills played a big part in the success. Moreover, every point was on point, from the details of the clothes to the expressions to the movements. It was simply impeccable. While everyone was still feeling complacent, they didn't know that the others at the entrance of the passage were waiting patiently. While waiting, they saw that Ziqin and the others had not returned after a long time, and a sense of disdain arose in their hearts. Still killing heavenly beasts. What kind of heavenly beasts can't be killed after killing for so long? After not returning for a long time, and thinking about the scene from before, everyone naturally guessed that the conversation between Ziqin and the spirit-devouring rat was an act, and it was for them to see. As the number one person in the same realm, defeating so many invincible spirit bodies, if Ziqin was acting for them to see, they would naturally be happy and even feel very proud. However, in this situation, knowing that this was an act for them to see, and that they were treated as idiots, how could they accept this? Therefore, they recalled the previous details and severely criticized Ziqin and the others. From there, they peeled the cocoon and found all kinds of shortcomings. From the acting skills, clothes, expressions, and movements, everyone picked out a lot of problems. In the end, they summed it up, and that was bad, too bad, to the extreme. With such bad acting skills, it wouldn't even be enough to deceive a 3-year-old child, let alone them, who are outstanding and mighty geniuses of this generation. After thinking through this point and seeing the most fundamental reason, everyone was no longer in a hurry. Instead, they waited for Zichen and the others to return. Acting, don't you know how to act? Acting, you should at least act back. Sure enough, Zichen and the others finally returned after killing the heavenly beasts for a long time. However, when they saw the black mass of people at the entrance of the passage, they were all dumbfounded. Zichen is back, let's go in quickly. Yes, Zichen is back. If we don't go in now, we won't have any more opportunities. Not bad, let's go in quickly. Chapter 1104. With such obvious teasing, Zichen and the others could naturally tell that the show had failed. However, he was extremely puzzled as to what exactly went wrong. Of course, Zichen had never doubted that there was a problem with his acting. He could not find the reason. In short, there was a problem. Naturally, the show could not be performed according to the original version. Zichen will go in first. Are you guys going in or not? If not, we'll go in. After being exposed, Zichen's expression was a little ugly, and he did not want to act anymore. However, who knew that everyone was still teasing him? In an instant, his ugly expression became a little gloomy. Zichen released a wave of coldness from his body. It was as cold as the air, and wherever it passed, the crowd shivered. The banter on their faces disappeared in an instant. It was unknown if it was because of the cold, but their faces were pale. The mocking voices also disappeared instantly. Only then did everyone completely wake up and feel a lingering fear. After all, this was Zichen, the number 1 person in the same level. Thinking of this problem, everyone wanted to slap themselves a few times. It was none of their business whether the other party had good acting skills or not. No matter how bad the other party's acting skills were, it was their business. The other party was strong and had the support of several major forces as his backing. Moreover, he had the final say here. Under such circumstances, the other party's poor acting skills were relatively useless. In the end, the strong preyed on the weak. Since schemes did not work, they could only use force. As his gaze swept past, everyone shut up. Zichen was very satisfied with this effect. Then he turned around and frowned. Why do I feel that there's something wrong with this place? Is the passage here abnormal? Feel it carefully again. Hearing this, everyone felt uncomfortable in the pit of their stomach. They had the urge to vomit blood. Is there any point in acting? We don't even dare to judge you, but you're still acting. Besides Zichen, the devil ape used the delusion breaker eye to investigate. After a moment, the devil ape shook its head and found nothing. Zichen also used the yin-yang eye to investigate and did not find anything unusual. However, he also had a strange feeling in his heart. Almost everyone's attention was on the spirit-devouring rat. In this place, it was probably the only existence that could see the heretics. They hadn't left yet. Naturally, they were waiting to find the real entrance. So, there was no point in hiding at this moment. The spirit-devouring rat held its head high and puffed out its chest, enjoying the gazes of the crowd as it walked towards the passage ahead. Although they did not personally prove that this path was blocked, everyone could faintly guess. At this moment, when they saw the spirit-devouring rats heading straight for the passage, they became very puzzled. The spirit-devouring rat walked to the front of the passageway, but did not enter. Instead, it turned around and walked towards the back. It seemed to be calculating some kind of number. When it stepped forward, its steps were extremely small, and it seemed to be very careful. It used small steps to take 299 steps, but for a normal person, it would only take 99 steps. Zichen and the others naturally knew that the spirit-devouring rat was showing off, so they did not deliberately urge it. Thinking about it, it was not easy for the spirit-devouring rat. It was clearly a rat, but it had always been used like a dog. Now that it finally had a chance to show off, how could they not let it show off a little longer? As if it felt that it was powerful enough, it pointed its little finger in front of it. As the finger fell, a white energy bloomed from its finger and pointed at the void. In the next moment, the void trembled as if something had been pointed out. Ouch! Immediately after, under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, the spirit-devouring rat let out a strange cry, and its entire body flew backwards. Its body retreated again and again before finally falling, almost falling out of the passageway. Its white fur was full of dust, and there were traces of blood at the corner of its mouth. It looked very miserable. However, at this moment, no one noticed its sorry state. Of course, it was not that everyone ignored its sorry state, but rather that they ignored the spirit-devouring rat. At this moment, their gazes, including the gazes of Zichen and the others, fell on the place where the spirit-devouring rat pointed. In the originally empty place, there was actually a black ancient castle at this moment. The black ancient castle in front of them was not big. It was not as big as the flaming ancient castle that Zichen had snatched back then, and it was thousands of miles away from the ancient castle formed by the holy burial ground. However, an ancient castle suddenly appeared in this area. Naturally, everyone knew what this meant. For a moment, everyone looked at the ancient castle with eager eyes. The black ancient castle was made of the same material as the gate of the holy burial ground. Even through a barrier of light, everyone could still feel the ancient aura from within. Seeing everyone involuntarily walk towards the black ancient castle, the spirit-devouring rat crawled up and said with dissatisfaction, "A bunch of disloyal fellows!" Looking at the black ancient castle, everyone's expressions naturally changed. The middle-aged demon was the first to send a voice transmission, "Your Highness." "Don't worry, I have my own arrangements." The group of demons slowly approached the ancient castle. The ancient castle was not big, so it naturally could not accommodate thousands of people present. Therefore, these people surrounded the ancient castle through the barrier. Therefore, after the door opened a crack, the two of them immediately retreated and looked ahead warily. Like a rusty iron door, the door let out an extremely ear-piercing sound before slowly opening. When the door was completely opened, a vast and ancient aura surged out from the door, causing the robes of the people in front to flutter. When the door opened, other than this aura, there was no other abnormality. Before anyone could take a closer look, someone swept past Zichen from behind and rushed towards the door. In an instant, a total of 10 light figures rushed forward. Swoosh! 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 Just as they rushed through the door, rays of light lit up on both sides of the castle. What lit up were balls of flames. These flames formed fireballs that fell from the sky and landed on the corridor in front of the ancient castle. Following that, shrill screams rang out. Flames fell from all directions, covering the entire corridor. The mortal origin realm cultivators who rushed in only had time to let out shrill screams before their bodies were ignited by the flames. Then, their bodies melted in the flames. This scene was just like the flames of life that Zichen had used back then. The immense power shocked everyone, and their expressions gradually turned solemn. At that moment, they finally understood why Zichen and the perfect body were so careful. After passing through the corridor ahead, they arrived at a hall. The door to the hall was tightly shut, and they couldn't see what was inside. After the people who rushed forward died, no one came forward. The fireball from before also dissipated. The corridor was very clean. The flames from before didn't leave any scars on the ground. Even the dead cultivators didn't leave any ashes on the ground. It should be a test. If one is fast enough or possesses a strange movement technique, the chances of passing are very high, Zichen said after pondering for a moment. The perfect body looked at Zichen and said, "I'm not sure about the power of that flame. If it's comparable to the flames of life, I'm afraid we won't be able to pass. Why don't you try the strength of the flame?" Chapter 1105. The perfect body's words seemed to have the intention of using Zichen as a tool. But in fact, that wasn't the case. Just as he said, if Zichen couldn't pass through the corridor ahead, no one present could. If the power of the flames was really like the flames of life, only Zichen could pass through them. This was because the flames of life were just too powerful. It was so powerful that no one dared to take the risk. If they touched it, they would die. Although it wasn't wrong to insist on searching for treasures, one had to act according to one's capabilities, especially when there was still a path to choose from. No one was willing to die for nothing. Therefore, only Zichen dared to step forward and give it a try. After nodding, Zichen stepped forward. His expression was equally cautious, as he didn't dare be careless. Gold and silver light emitted from his eyes. He wanted to use the yin-yang eye to observe carefully, but the yin-yang eye had repeatedly proven to Zichen that it wasn't omnipotent. It was the same this time. If he couldn't figure out anything, he could only barge in. Zichen walked to the front of the castle and was about to step into it. Then his body began to glow as a resplendent golden light rushed out from his body and charged forward. As he charged forward, the golden light immediately transformed into a figure. This figure was extremely resplendent, but after its feet landed, it suddenly dimmed. Fireballs appeared in the sky once again and rained down at the golden avatar. Behind Zichen, everyone's pupils constricted. For Zichen to be so careful, it was enough to prove that the castle was extraordinary. The golden avatar raised its head and looked at the fiery rain with indifferent eyes. Light flickered in its eyes. This was a deduction. Of course, it wasn't the kind of deduction that Su Mengyao used to predict the future and search for a chance of survival. Instead, it was calculating the landing point of the fiery rain. Although it looked like a fiery rain that filled the sky, there was actually a gap when it landed. As for the golden avatar, it knew extreme speed and could dodge through this gap. Just as the fiery rain was about to land on him, golden light began to flash around his body, forming a light barrier. Then he moved at extreme speed and began to dodge through the gaps. At the same time, he dodged forward. Outside the castle, everyone widened their eyes as they carefully watched the golden avatar dodge the fiery rain and pass through it. Suddenly, a ball of flame brushed past the golden light barrier, and the entire light barrier immediately burst into flames. Seeing this scene, everyone cried out in alarm. However, the clone did not stop. It continued to dodge until it reached the end of the rain of fire. Only then was it burned and dissipated by the flames. After the clone disappeared, everyone came to the conclusion that there was a gap in the fiery rain, and the flame was not the flame of life. This discovery made everyone slightly relieved. Many of them were able to pass through the rain of fire alone. But was it just a rain of fire? The golden light flashed again, and the second doppelganger entered the rain of fire. Because he had experience this time, his dodging speed was much more agile. Just as he was about to walk out of the rain of fire, he was grazed by the flames. Then the clone passed through the rain of fire and rushed toward the main hall. The golden doppelganger had only taken a few steps forward when streaks of sword light appeared in the sky without any warning. These streaks of sword light were burning with flames. They were swords of fire. Although the sword of fire was not as dense as the previous rain of fire, it was much stronger in terms of speed and power. Although the clone that was charging forward was constantly on guard and began dodging the moment the sword light appeared, it was still shattered by the sword light after only advancing a few meters. The second doppelganger dissipated, but there were sighs from the surroundings. Clearly, at least half of the people who had seen Zichen's two clones had lost the right to enter. These people were extremely depressed and sighed repeatedly. However, they were in the mortal origin realm after all. They had crossed the sea of blood and climbed the stairway to heaven, so they had extraordinary intelligence. They quickly adjusted their emotions and walked towards the passage and the stairs. "How is it?" asked the perfect body when he saw Zichen not moving. "It's about time." With that said, Zichen took a deep breath and stepped into the castle. Princess's eyes lit up when she saw Zichen enter the castle. She was a demon and a demon highness. She had never believed in gods, but now she was praying. She was praying for the gods to bless her. She prayed that this was a huge opportunity. Zichen entered the castle, and the rain of fire descended. He looked up at the sky and saw the gap in the rain of fire. His feet flashed rapidly. The speed displayed by the doppelganger had already shocked many people. At this moment, the speed displayed by his true body was even faster than the doppelganger. Everyone couldn't help but exclaim. With 2 experiences and a faster speed, it was naturally easy for him to dodge the rain of fire. As the light flashed, Zichen passed through the rain of fire like a beam of light. After passing the rain of fire, he arrived at the spot where the sword light was. The flaming sword light appeared without any warning and silently slashed towards Zichen's true body. Zichen used his extreme speed to dodge the sword light. When he couldn't dodge in time, he would shoot out a beam of energy with a flick of his finger. He didn't seek to shatter the sword light, but only to change its trajectory. He naturally couldn't make any mistakes while moving forward because mistakes would result in death. Therefore, Zichen successfully passed the sword light, but he was still 1/3 of the way to the door. After he took a step, his entire body seemed to have fallen into an illusion. He stood there motionless. Seeing Zichen pass through the rain of fire and the sword light, the others became restless and prepared to go forward. However, when they saw Zichen suddenly stop moving, their expressions changed and they stopped what they were doing. The greater the difficulty, the greater the reward. I hope there will be more tests. The only one present who wasn't in a hurry was the princess. "It's you." Looking at the person in front of him, Zichen was stunned. It was a young man. At this moment, he was looking at Zichen with a smile and said, "You're quite lucky. Even the ban on killing didn't kill you." Zichen's expression changed. "You saw it." The young man said proudly, "Of course. This world is under my control. There's nothing I can't see." Zichen asked, "That means it's very easy for you to break the ban on killing." The young man stretched out a finger and waved it in front of Zichen. Then he used another finger to draw an area the size of a grain of rice. He said, "You only need to move a little and you'll be able to break the formation." Zichen's expression became extremely complicated. He asked, "Are you saying this now to show off? Or were you prepared to save me, but didn't expect me to break the formation myself?" The young man said seriously, "Of course I'm showing off. As for me helping you, it's impossible because I don't want to break the rules." Zichen was speechless. At the same time, he had the urge to vomit blood. He thought to himself, "Why are you showing off in front of me if you don't want to save me?" He took a deep breath and asked, "You came here just to show off to me?" The young man shook his head and said, "Of course not. Other than showing off, I'm also giving you a sword. You can dodge it, but if you can't, you'll die." Zichen's expression changed a few times. He said, "This should be the 3rd test. Come then." The young man didn't waste any more words. A flaming sword suddenly appeared in his hand. He held the sword and slashed at Zichen. "Wait!" Zichen shouted. The sword light stopped in between his eyebrows. The young man asked, "There's a problem. What's in the castle?" The young man smiled faintly. "Didn't you feel it?" As soon as he finished speaking, the sword light between his eyebrows suddenly released an endless killing intent. A powerful aura was released. It was as if a fire dragon had rushed out and crazily bit at Zichen. Zichen was so close to the sword light, but the other party launched an attack. He only wanted to curse for being shameless, but at this moment, he didn't even have the time to do so. The fire dragon was already rushing towards him. Scram! Zichen shouted and clenched his fist to strike. However, he suddenly realized that he couldn't mobilize the perfect energy in his body. Other than that, even his perfect elemental energy seemed to be suppressed. However, it was still perfect elemental energy. Even if it was suppressed, its power wasn't small. Zichen mobilized his perfect elemental energy and used a tyrannical punch. Boom! The fist light collided with the fire dragon, creating an explosion. The two types of energy began to collide. Zichen's perfect elemental energy contained in his fist light successfully tore apart the fire dragon. Then, before the elemental energy dissipated, the fire dragon was crushed. The fire dragon dissipated. Zichen looked at the palace door on the stairs in front of him. He didn't know when he had walked through the corridor. As for the young man from before, he didn't know where he had gone. Standing in front of the palace door, Zichen didn't immediately push the door open. Instead, he turned around and looked at the crowd. At this moment, no one had entered, so naturally, there was no fire rain or sword light. Therefore, everyone could clearly see Zichen. When they saw that there was blood at the corner of Zichen's mouth, their expressions suddenly changed. Devil Ape asked from across the corridor, "Zichen, what happened?" Zichen pointed at the corridor and said, "This place is strange. It suppresses the body's strength and elemental energy. The third stage is the power of the sword. If you block it, you pass. That sword is not weak, especially after elemental energy is suppressed." Zichen's explanation was very clear, so everyone naturally understood. Upon hearing this, many people gave up. This was because some people weren't good at speed to begin with, yet they could suppress their elemental energy. If they rashly entered, they would be courting death. With people retreating, there were naturally people who went forward. Devil Ape was one of them. Zichen had already entered. Of course, he didn't have the intention of entering to obtain treasures. Instead, he wanted to take a look out of curiosity. Just as Devil Ape stepped forward and entered the castle, the perfect body jumped in as well. Of course, he had the pure intention of seeking treasures. After the perfect body, Ape Dragon walked into the castle, followed by a dragon person. Apart from that, Ming Xian chanted a Buddhist proclamation as resplendent Buddhist light shimmered around her. She propped up the strongest defense and walked in. After that, some extremely confident leaders of the factions entered one after another. Just as Zichen had said earlier, this place would suppress the strength of the physical body, and it also had a suppressive effect on the origin energy. The moment they stepped into the fort, the light around them immediately dimmed. Among the people present, the one who wasn't in a hurry was the fiend. When the princess saw that almost everyone had entered, she slowly stepped into the castle. Her face was filled with curiosity and calmness. It was as though she wasn't entering the castle to seek treasures, but to have fun. After the princess entered, the middle-aged fiend followed. As a guard, he naturally had to stay by her side at all times. Chapter 1106. With a gentle push, the door opened. The deep hall seemed to be a little dim because it had not been opened for a long time. The door was very tall, and the hall looked very tall from afar. However, the entire hall only had one floor. At a glance, the dim hall seemed very empty, with almost no decorations. At the end of his line of sight, Zichen saw a black stone table. 2 rows of stone shelves were placed on both sides of the stone table. There was a row of slots on the stone shelves, each of which held 3 black weapons. They were saber, sword, halberd, staff, axe, and hammer. From afar, there were some patterns carved on the surface of the black weapons, which looked like balls of burning flames. The weapons were the same color as the stone table and the ancient castle, and seemed to be made of the same material. Although Zichen did not sense any soul power from them, they should be extremely extraordinary since they were placed here. Zichen shifted his gaze from the stone shelves to the stone table. On the flat and smooth stone table, there was an item. This item was placed in the middle of the stone table, supported by a small black shelf. It was a pure black token, and the pattern on the token was also a flame. Looking at the position of the token, it was obviously more precious than the 6 weapons. However, Zichen could not guess its specific use. Just as Zichen was sizing up the hall, a scream came from behind him. It was a human cultivator who was set on fire by the rain of fire, his body melting in the rain of fire. The people behind him would enter soon. Zichen did not waste any more time and stepped into the hall. Just as he stepped into the hall, a mysterious force descended from the sky. Under the effect of this force, Zichen's physical strength was completely sealed. In addition, his perfect spiritual sense was also sealed, leaving only perfect origin power. Even so, the hall was still enveloped by a strong pressure. This pressure was very strong, and it forcibly suppressed Zichen's perfect origin power to the limit. Of course, this alone had no effect on Zichen entering the hall. However, Zichen suddenly felt a burning sensation coming from his abdomen, as if there was a ball of fire calcining his elemental core. A sharp pain came, and it was heart-wrenching. Zichen frowned slightly, thinking that there were indeed many tests. However, he quickly adjusted his mood and walked towards the palace. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. With each step forward, he felt the pain in his Yuan Dan increase slightly. After 5 steps, the pain had almost doubled. Sensing the unusual aura in the hall and recalling what the young man had said, Zichen's gaze once again fell on the token. There were traces of light emanating from it, and he had already vaguely guessed the use of the token. If that's the case, then we're really lucky. Zichen took a deep breath, suppressed the emotions in his heart, and continued forward. From time to time, there would be miserable screams coming from the corridor behind him. It was the unfortunate deaths of the challengers. At this moment, Zichen had already taken 10 steps forward. The burning sensation was 3 times stronger than when he first entered. 10 steps meant 10 meters, and behind 10 meters, the perfect body and the demonic ape arrived almost at the same time. The 2 of them naturally saw the things in the hall. Without any hesitation, they stepped into the hall one after another. Just as his feet stepped into the hall, the perfect body let out a tragic cry. He collapsed to the ground like a boneless person. What's wrong? The demonic ape looked at the perfect body beside him and bent down to pull him up. Don't touch me, don't touch me. It's hot. It's very hot. I'm about to catch fire, the perfect body shouted. Why are you nagging? Is it that serious? The demonic ape glanced at the perfect body with a mocking expression. He ignored the perfect body and walked forward. Although his footsteps weren't as fast as Zichen's, every step was firm. Damn it, damn it. How did this happen? Looking at Zichen, who was more than 10 meters away, and then at the relaxed demonic ape, the perfect body clenched his fists and constantly waved them forward. A perfect body could suppress a spirit body. The most powerful aspect of a perfect body was his perfect physique, which was also his physical strength. As for the essence energy in his body, it was really ordinary. This was his weakness, but he usually didn't care because strength was enough. However, in this hall, his physical strength was sealed. The suppressed essence energy felt like it was being roasted by fire. The intense pain made him unable to stand up. Of course, this didn't mean that the perfect body's willpower was too weak, but that the essence energy in his body was too weak. He couldn't withstand the roasting of the flames. Zhang Haotian stood outside and didn't enter. He saw Zichen push open the door and then see the things in the hall from afar. However, there was no joy on his face. Instead, it turned somewhat ugly. Looking at the spirit-devouring rat and Su Mengyao beside him, their expressions were unnatural. Even though Zichen was first, their expressions were extremely unnatural. This was because Princess was the last. From her expression, she had no intention of fighting for it. However, did she really ignore the things in the hall? The answer was definitely not. The real reason was that she wanted to take a shortcut. This was also the reason why the spirit-devouring rat had deliberately put on an act. As for Zichen, although he didn't understand why, he didn't have the time to ask back then. He could only cooperate with the act. As for later on, he didn't ask because he trusted her. "This woman is really detestable," the spirit-devouring rat said fiercely. Zhang Haoyan sighed and said, "But so what?" Back then, compared to Zichen's life, everything was fleeting. Zichen didn't know about the deal. In this situation, as insiders, they could enter the next level and wait for the demons to talk to Zichen. Unfortunately, although the people present weren't good people, they all valued their promises. In the entire Boundless sect, there was only one person who didn't care about promises. That was Monk Good and Evil. To him, as long as there were benefits and benefits, he would be shameless. Unfortunately, the monk wasn't here. The ape dragon and the dragon man also entered the hall one after another, feeling the pressure, their brows furrowed slightly, but it wasn't as bad as the perfect body's performance. After adjusting their emotions slightly, they walked forward. At this moment, Zichen had already walked far away. Everyone shouldn't have been able to catch up and should have completely given up, but no one gave up. Everyone walked towards the end of the hall because Zichen's speed had clearly decreased. Screams could be heard from time to time. There were still people who were unwilling to accept this and wanted to enter, but most of them had already given up. After giving up, they didn't leave. Instead, they stood outside the castle and watched. They wanted to see who would obtain the things in the castle. As he moved forward, the burning sensation of the flames became more and more intense. Waves of indescribable pain emerged. Zichen's forehead was already covered in sweat. Zichen didn't know what the flames were, but he felt that they were extraordinary. This was because the elemental energy in his body, which was said to be perfect and suppressed to the limit without any impurities, was being compressed again at this moment. In addition to the compression, there were also traces of impurities in the perfect elemental energy. The perfect elemental energy was being roasted out of impurities. What kind of situation was this? This was a situation that no one could imagine. Drops of sweat appeared on his forehead and slid down his cheeks. Zichen's gaze was still incomparably resolute. He had already guessed and confirmed the use of this hall, so he had to obtain that token, because this hall was not only useful to him, but also to the entire Boundless sect. At the same time, the other existences who had entered the hall also sensed the extraordinariness of the hall and guessed its use. Naturally, they couldn't give up. As they sped up with all their might, they also secretly prayed that Zichen wouldn't be able to hold on and wouldn't be able to go up. But as they prayed, they did not think that if even Zichen could not cross and reach the end, then who else could reach the end? Even more people entered the hall, but not everyone could keep moving forward. A few people walked for about 10 steps before they couldn't hold on and directly sat down cross-legged on the ground, no longer moving forward. Even the perfect body from before crawled for 5 steps before sitting down cross-legged and controlling his elemental energy to resist the flames, no longer moving forward. Those who advanced continued to move forward, while those who couldn't move forward stopped and began to resist the flames, increasing the purity of their elemental energy. Like a flower stroll, the princess finally walked through the long corridor and arrived outside the hall. When she saw the people sitting cross-legged in the hall, a trace of joy appeared on her face. At this moment, Zichen was almost at the stone table. Wherever Zichen passed, large puddles of sweat would be left on the ground. His entire body had long since been drenched in sweat. It could be said that for the token, Zichen was going all out. However, Zichen would never have thought that there was already someone waiting outside, demanding for his harvest with righteous indignation. The princess stood outside the hall and didn't enter. The middle-aged demon walked in and sensed something. His expression changed dramatically. He wanted to send a message, but found that his spiritual consciousness was suppressed. As such, he retreated and explained the situation in the hall. Oh, the princess's eyes began to shine, looking at the people sitting cross-legged. She guessed the use of this hall. It seems that this is a place specially for cultivating elemental energy. Our luck is really good. Once we get this hall, the demonic energy in our bodies will be much purer. At the same level, we can already suppress humans. With this hall, humans won't be able to do anything. The middle-aged demon hesitated. Then, Your Highness, this thing is so precious. Is Zi-Chun really willing to give it to us? The princess's expression changed. In the end, she said, he has to give it. Even if he pesters me, we have to get it. Suddenly, a loud shout came from the hall. It was Zi-Chun, but he couldn't hold it in any longer because of the flames. At this moment, Zi-Chun was only 5 steps away from the token. But these 5 steps were so close that they seemed to be worlds apart. Sweat dripped down like water droplets, soaking Zi-Chun's body. Just 5 more steps. He panted, looking at the token in front of him, trying to adjust his breathing. Then he took another step. At this moment, everyone seemed to have reached their limit. Even if they were unwilling, they could only give up. Because if they took another step, the flames would completely ignite the primal core in Abdomen's body. They watched Zi-Chun, watching as Zi-Chun approached the stone table with great determination. Zi-Chun now needed a long time to adjust and prepare for every step he took, but he still moved forward. 5 steps for steps, 3 steps. Finally, there were only 2 steps left. This time, Zi-Chun rested for a long time before standing up. Under everyone's nervous gaze, Zi-Chun took another step. With 1 step, Zi-Chun's legs went soft and he almost fell. Chapter 1107. Zi-Chun was still 1 step away from the stone table and 2 steps away from the stone token. However, as long as he took this step, he would be able to reach out and grab the token. He stood in the center of the stone table and ignored the 6 extraordinary weapons on both sides. Since he had guessed the use of the token, he would naturally take it first. In fact, Zi-Chun's worries were completely unnecessary. Regardless of whether it was the devil ape or the others, they would not be able to reach this point in a short amount of time. In this world, only those with perfect elemental energy could reach this point in 1 try. Although this was the last step, it was also the most difficult step. Within Zi-Chun's abdomen, layers of flames had already appeared on the surface of his elemental core. This was a sign that his entire elemental core was about to be ignited. If Zi-Chun meditated here for 8 to 10 days, 3 months or 2 months, he would naturally be confident that he would be able to take this step easily. However, although he had a few hours now, he did not have the time for 8 to 10 days. Under the pressure of the flames and the large hall, Zi-Chun could not use the elemental energy in his body. As for techniques, he could not use them at all. Right now, he was just like an ordinary person. Zi-Chun did not move, but no one urged him. This was because everyone knew how dangerous this last step was. The devil ape's face was full of worry. He advised, "If you really can't do it, then forget it. Rest for a while more. I don't want to see your entire body catch fire the moment you take a step." This sounded like a joke, but it was also the truth. The reason they did not continue forward was because they had sensed their own limits and were afraid that their bodies would catch fire the next moment. However, Zi-Chun had already reached his limit previously. Right now, he was already putting his life on the line. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing," Zi-Chun said. His voice was rough and hoarse. Under everyone's attention, Zi-Chun slowly stood up and took a step forward. As he lifted his foot, his elemental core was ignited. As soon as his foot landed, flames started to burn on his body. Upon seeing Zi-Chun's body on fire, everyone exclaimed. This was because this time, Zi-Chun was being ignited and not enveloped by the flames of life. However, it was precisely because of his experience of being burned by fire that Zi-chan remained calm even though his body was on fire. He was so calm that it was as if the one burning was someone else. As a result, he took a step forward, and a second step naturally followed. It was simple and natural. At the same time, he leaned over and reached out to touch the black command medallion. Then he exerted force and grabbed it. At this moment, the origin energy in his body was utterly unable to be mobilized, and the command token was unable to recognize him as its owner after he grabbed it. So he was naturally unable to break free of the pressure here. However, Zi-chan acted as if he hadn't considered this problem at all. His expression was as calm as ever, and he didn't even frown in the face of the flames. The instant he gripped the command medallion, a surge of origin power rushed out from his body and landed on the medallion, which then recognized it as its owner. The process of master recognition was very simple, so simple that it only took an instant. After master recognition, the pressure on his body dissipated, and so did the flames that ignited his body. In the entire hall, the pressure on everyone was relieved. They knew that Zi-chan had succeeded. The hall had recognized him as its master, and their expressions became extremely complicated. The demonic ape transformed into a streak of black light, then swept up the 6 black weapons on the stone table as quickly as it could. Everyone sighed, but they had already discussed this beforehand, so they couldn't criticize the demonic ape at this moment. Zi-chan gripped the command medallion tightly and sat down cross-legged. It had to be said that the moment he took that step forward and grasped the command medallion, his body had already been burned by the flames. The demonic ape wielded the black staff and stood guard beside Zi-chan. Immediately afterwards, everyone felt a cold breeze pass by. Zhang Haoyan had already appeared beside Zi-chan. Zi-chan was injured, and with the demonic ape and Zhang Haoyan present, no one dared to fight over the command medallion, not to mention LV Peng and the others. However, they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. Because of this hall, the Boundless sect would probably be able to cultivate even more experts with pure origin power. Your Highness, Zi-chan succeeded. When he saw that all of the restrictions had disappeared, a trace of excitement appeared in the middle-aged demon's eyes. Machem, the princess nodded, her voice trembling. Now all they could do was wait. Zi-chan's injuries weren't light, but in a situation where there was no pressure, Zi-chan's recovery ability naturally increased, and his injuries rapidly healed. During this time, the others glanced around the hall and discovered that it was extremely empty. Apart from the pillars, there was nothing else. Of course, there were also 2 black stone shelves and a stone table, but no one was shameless enough to say that they wanted to take those things away. They gazed curiously at the hall, then began to quietly discuss the hall's effects. A moment later, Zi-chan opened his eyes. His injuries had completely healed. When he saw the people around him, he nodded and stood up. When they saw that Zi-chan had stood up, everyone came forward to inquire about his well-being and whether or not he was injured. When he saw the desire in their eyes, Zi-chan knew that they weren't concerned about his injuries. He smiled and replied that he was fine. Then he took out the command medallion and sensed it again. Sect Master Zi-chan, this command medallion controls this hall. What are its effects? One of them asked. Zi-chan learned about the command medallion's effects in the shortest time possible. At the same time, he also learned about the hall's function. With the injection of a strand of elemental energy, the command medallion began to glow. Then, the entire hall began to rumble. In the empty hall, there seemed to be a mechanism on the ground as cracks appeared. Then, black stone walls appeared from the cracks, blocking everyone's path. The rumbling continued as stone walls appeared in all directions of the hall. From there, the entire hall was divided into small spaces. Everyone stared at this scene with their mouths agape. In their hearts, they were even more certain of the hall's main effect. Following the disappearance of the rumbling sound, the previously spacious hall now seemed extremely small. Through Zichen's perception, there were now 99 additional rooms in the hall. The 99 rooms divided the pressure in the hall into 10 major levels and 99 minor levels. It could be said that the pressure in each room was different, but the difference was not very big. However, from the 1st to the 10th room, the difference in pressure was almost double. This was something that Zichen had risked his life to obtain, so it naturally belonged to him. He could enjoy everyone's jealous gazes and compliments without any guilt. Zichen was very satisfied with this palace, extremely satisfied. With this palace, his perfect Yuanli would be able to go one step further. Correspondingly, the Yuanli of the devil ape and the others would also be able to go one step further. It can even be divided. It's not a problem for 10 people to stay in each room. This is indeed a good thing. Congratulations, Pavilion Master Zichen. You've obtained another great treasure. Everyone congratulated him. Zichen was in a good mood and nodded in response. Beside Zichen, Zhang Haoyan and the others couldn't feel happy because this palace was too precious. It was precious to the point that it could allow a power to rise up. Not only was it useful to individuals, it was even more useful to a power. They glanced at the princess, who had yet to enter. Her expression was calm, but she had been paying attention to Zichen the entire time. They naturally knew what she was thinking. Everyone, are you going to the 2nd floor, or are you going to cultivate here? When he saw that everyone was unwilling to leave, Zichen chuckled. There are still opportunities on the 2nd floor. If you're late, you'll miss them. As for here, once we return to the Boundless sect, you can go into seclusion at any time. When everyone heard this, they smiled and nodded, indicating that they would talk about it when they returned. Afterwards, the group of people headed outside. But just as they reached the door, they were blocked by 2 people. It was the princess and the middle-aged demon. The princess blocked Zichen and stretched out her hand. "Give it to me." "Give what?" Zichen looked at her, confused. "The hall's medallion." The princess pointed at the hall. Zichen stared at the princess intently for a full 3 seconds. During this time, his expression slowly changed. Even though Zichen did not say anything, his expression said it all. She was either calling him an idiot, a madman, or an idiot who had forgotten to take his medicine. But no matter what her expression was, Zichen did not curse her. Instead, he said seriously, "I'm not giving it to you. It's mine." Indeed, this was Zichen's. He had risked his life for it. At this moment, it wasn't just Zichen who thought this. Everyone else thought the same. In fact, they all believed that the princess was being unreasonable. But what they did not understand was that even though the demons had the advantage in numbers in front of Zichen, they were not unreasonable bargaining chips. The princess didn't care about the expressions of the surrounding people. Instead, she looked at Zichen and faintly smiled. Then she said in an extremely serious tone, "I know that in your heart you definitely think that I am being unreasonable, or that I am an idiot or a madman. However, what I want to tell you is that this thing is indeed mine." Zichen stared at her, his expression growing more and more strange. He wondered if she had really forgotten to take her medicine. But why hadn't this guy reminded her? Indeed, a moment later, the demon sovereign next to her spoke, but not to remind the princess to take her medicine. Instead, he looked at Zichen and said, "Sect Master Zichen, this thing really is ours. If you don't believe me, you can ask your friends." Zichen turned to look at the demon ape. The middle-aged demon said, "Oh, I didn't say it clearly so your friends might not know. But you can ask this brother here. It should be Zhang Haoyan, Brother Haotian, right?" Zhang Haoyan wanted to curse. "What Brother Haotian? You want to steal my things, but you call me Brother Haotian? What's going on here?" Zichen asked Zhang Haoyan in confusion. Zhang Haotian raised his head and found that everyone was looking at him. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. After all, there were many factions that were helping Zichen. If he made a promise to each of them, then the Boundless sect would have nothing to do with it. But everyone was looking at him. Under these circumstances, he had to say something. After thinking for a moment, he said, "I promised her that I would help her once." Zichen looked at Zhang Haotian with a strange expression. He glanced at the princess, then at Zhang Haotian. After knowing Zhang Haotian for so many years, he believed that he understood Zhang Haotian very well. He knew that Zhang Haotian was not this kind of person, but under these circumstances, he naturally couldn't get to the bottom of it, even though his heart was already burning with curiosity. As such, he asked, "Are you serious?" Zhang Haotian took a deep breath and said, "Of course, this is a promise." Zichen nodded, indicating that he understood. Then he patted Zhang Haotian's shoulder and took out the black token without hesitation. Chapter 1108. The medallion was in his hand. He had obtained it, just like that. Holding the medallion, the middle-aged demon felt like he was dreaming, unable to believe what he was seeing. This was a black medallion, a medallion that controlled the entire hall and castle, and one that Zichen had risked his life to obtain. From everyone's expressions just now, one could see how precious this hall was. Even Zichen valued it greatly. And just now, when Her Highness had asked for it, Zichen had directly refused, as if calling Her Highness an idiot. But with just one sentence from Zhang Haotian, Zichen had given it to her. The middle-aged demon felt his mind in a mess. Wasn't Zhang Haotian Zichen's subordinate? Why would Zichen give away such a precious item with just one sentence from his subordinate? He didn't understand, so he naturally didn't understand. But the medallion was in his hand. Even if the other side was playing tricks, it was already too late. He subconsciously tightened his grip on the medallion, then carefully handed it to the princess. Compared to Zichen's magnanimity, this Earth Origin Realm middle-aged demon was much more stingy. But no one laughed at him, because if they were in his shoes, they might not have done any better. These people also didn't dare to believe it. They didn't understand why Zichen would give such a precious item to the demon princess, just because of one sentence from Zhang Haotian. Didn't Zichen know that giving this item to the demon race would strengthen the demon race? Didn't Zichen know that giving this item to the demon race would strengthen the demon race and kill many humans in the future? Zichen really didn't know, because he didn't even think about it, so he naturally didn't care. They stared blankly at Zichen, and the expression on their faces became very strange. The princess took the medallion. Although her calm expression didn't change, her heart was already in turmoil. She naturally knew how precious the medallion was, and at the same time, she was prepared to use any means to obtain it. Jesting, threatening with promises, threatening with the demon race, and when necessary, she could even make some sacrifices. Of course, these sacrifices were limited to the demon race, giving up some benefits, such as brilliant demon crystals. Even though she was standing there without moving, she had already thought of many things and made several preparations. It could be said that she was using all of her strength. However, the feeling of her full strength hitting the air in the next moment made her feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, she breathed a sigh of relief. After all, Zichen was the strongest person here. It was indeed extraordinary to be able to snatch a piece of fatty meat from him. "Let's go." Handing over the token, Zichen signaled Su Mengyao and the others to leave, wanting to give Zhang Haotian some time. However, as soon as they left, Zhang Haotian followed them. A hint of doubt appeared in Zichen's eyes, but he did not ask any questions. Zichen and the others left and entered the second level. In the blink of an eye, the master of the hall had changed from Zichen to a demon. There was no point for the others to stay, so they all left. Only the princess and the middle-aged demon were left in the hall. The middle-aged demon said excitedly, "Congratulations, Your Highness, for obtaining a great treasure." The princess nodded. For some reason, she, who should have been excited and happy, could not feel happy at this moment. Looking at the situation just now, Zichen obviously did not know why he had given the token, but Zhang Haotian had given it to him. What was this? Trust? Was it really trust? However, Zhang Haoshen was just a subordinate. Why should she trust a subordinate? The princess could not understand. She did not even trust her siblings. So why should she trust a subordinate? Not to mention her brothers and sisters. Even if her father was here and suddenly asked her for this token, she would probably hesitate. Subordinate? If Zichen heard this, he would probably laugh. If Zhang Haotian and the others heard this, they would probably laugh as well. Since she could not understand, she stopped thinking about it. Many demons were still waiting outside. Just now, the demons had already surrounded this place. She used her spiritual sense to activate the token, and the hall shrunk until it was put away. The second level was not much different from the first level. There were many heavenly beasts here, so it was easier for Zichen and the others to kill them. And without the large factions here, there were far fewer people trying to steal from them. As they walked, Zichen's desire for gossip continued to burn. When they reached the second level, he could not help but ask, "When did the two of you begin?" Zhang Haoqing glanced at Zichen suspiciously. "That shouldn't be the case. This is the first time you've met, and you haven't had much time to interact before," Zichen muttered. Suddenly his eyes lit up. Could it be love at first sight? It turned out that Zichen had thought that the two of them were having an affair. So that was why Zichen had taken the initiative to hand over the token. When Zhang Haoyan heard this, he couldn't help but feel moved. However, Zichen had obviously misunderstood. He smiled bitterly and said, "I'm not stupid. Even if it was love at first sight, I could have just given you something else. Why would I give you that ancient castle? That thing is as important to the boundless sect as the heavenly scripture. I know what's right and wrong." Then why? Zichen did not understand. "Because of you." Zhang Haotian stared at Zichen. The others did not say anything. "Me." Zichen quickly realized what was going on. "Because you wanted to save me, you made a deal with me." Zhang Haotian nodded and then explained their deal. At the time, the situation was urgent, and Zichen's life was in danger. Zhang Haotian had no time to think about it. When Zichen heard this, he said, "As expected of the princess. She's quite intelligent and knows how to raise the price. If you run into her in the future, you need to be careful." "You're not angry?" Zhang Haotian asked. Zichen chuckled. "What's the point of being angry? Am I supposed to steal it back? But it's a pity that the ancient castle is gone. If I had known earlier, I would have taken those weapons first. That way, I wouldn't have come out empty-handed," Zichen sighed. "The weapons are with me," the demonic ape suddenly said. Zichen turned around and glanced at the demonic ape. "After the token recognized me as its master and the pressure disappeared, I immediately took those weapons. I was so angry that I forgot about it." As he spoke, the demonic ape took out the 6 black weapons from before and stabbed them into the ground in front of him. Zichen looked at the sky piercer and felt extremely satisfied. He then grabbed it in his hand. The weight of the sky piercer was out of Zichen's expectations. As Zichen picked up the sky piercer, he felt an indescribable power coming from the sky piercer. This power entered his body and went straight to abdomen. Then it began to suppress abdomen's elemental energy. Just as Zichen picked up the sky piercer, the demonic ape also picked up the black staff. His expression changed when he felt the strange power in it. Immediately after, Zhang Haotian picked up the black sword and felt a strange feeling coming from it. The 3 of them looked at each other and their expressions became extremely strange. After a while, Zichen said, "Not bad, it's very convenient." The demonic ape said, "It's very convenient. It's good for elemental energy if you keep holding it." Zhang Haotian asked, "You can keep holding it?" Zichen said generously, "Of course, let's split it." Zichen took the sky piercer, Zhang Haotian took the sword, and the demonic ape took the staff. 3 out of the 6 items were gone, leaving only the saber axe, and hammer. However, there was no one to choose from these 3 items. LV Peng was an array player, and Su Mingyao wouldn't choose this. Long Hu didn't know how to use it at all, so these 3 items were empty. Me too. I'm better at using axes and hammers. I also know more than 10 powerful saber techniques. A voice sounded from afar as a golden beam flew over. Seeing the golden beam fly over, Zichen and the demonic ape looked at each other and attacked tacitly. He took the saber, and the demonic ape took the hammer, leaving only the black axe. Aren't you being too unloyal? You can't use it, so why don't you give it to me? The perfect body appeared and took the axe without standing on ceremony. When the axe entered his hand, it was extremely heavy. Then it suppressed his essence energy, causing his expression to change. Then he seemed to recall something as he nodded and sighed in admiration. Yes, as expected of an ancient armament. It's indeed good stuff. It's not a soul-spirit armament, but it's better than a soul-spirit armament. The perfect body waved his wrist in satisfaction as the axe sliced through the air, emitting a whistling sound. Previously, he had only thought that this item could suppress and strengthen his essence energy, but he had forgotten to sense if it was a soul-spirit armament. Now, after sensing that there was no soul in it, Zichen asked, "Ancient armament. You're saying that this is an ancient armament?" Many years ago, Zichen had come into contact with ancient armaments and knew of their existence. However, the ancient armaments he had come into contact with back then were worlds apart from the one in his hand. It's much stronger than a mortal-level armament and also stronger than a soul-spirit armament. However, there's no soul in it. For such a situation to happen in this world, it can only be an ancient armament, the perfect body said confidently. Ancient armament literally meant a weapon refined by the ancient race. However, this ancient race didn't refer to the current ancient race, but the original ancient race. It was the ancient race ruled by the 4 royal races. Although the current ancient race wasn't weak, many of their skills had been lost. To be able to discover an ancient armament here, the perfect body was still very excited. In the team, the spirit-devouring rats had long left to search for a relatively mysterious place in this area alone. As for Zichen and company, they began their boring monster hunting mode. When they saw heavenly beasts, they would step forward to kill them, dig out their inner cores, and leave. This meaningless cycle continued because they were waiting for the spirit-devouring rats to discover something again. No one would be willing to lose the ancient castle they had obtained. Although Zichen had given it away in a carefree manner and didn't care about it, losing it still pained him. Apart from Zichen and company, the other factions were also searching for strange places in this area. Some people even stopped killing heavenly beasts and specially searched for the so-called fake passageway. This was because after finding the passageway and taking 99 steps corresponding to the passageway, an impressive ancient castle hall would appear. Along the way, Zichen and company kept holding black weapons in their hands. These weapons had a suppressive effect on essence energy. Although the effect wasn't as good as the hall, the most important thing was that they could always be held in their hands. Furthermore, the black weapons were very heavy and extremely extraordinary. They could be used as weapons. It's been 5 days, but the spirit-devouring rats still haven't sent out a signal. Don't tell me there's no hall on this level. After 5 days of no news, everyone appeared somewhat anxious. Although they had already obtained quite a number of heavenly beast inner cores. No matter how valuable these things were, they weren't even a tenth of the hall. Therefore, everyone was still thinking of the hall with extraordinary effects. This world is so big, it's impossible to finish exploring it in 5 days. Let's wait, said Zichen. After the perfect body took the black axe, he didn't stay any longer and left. Only Zichen and company waited. 5 days passed, but the spirit-devouring rats found nothing. Apart from that, the other factions didn't discover anything either. Thousands of people scattered, but they didn't discover anything. They didn't even find an exit. This couldn't be a sealed world. There had to be an exit, but no one could find it. During this period, LV Peng tried to break through and build a teleportation array, but it was useless. On the 20th day of their arrival in this world, just as everyone was about to despair, Zichen finally received a voice transmission from the spirit devouring rats. Chapter 1109. The voice transmission of the spirit-devouring rat came a little slowly, but after hearing it, Zichen and the others moved towards the place pointed by the spirit-devouring rat as fast as they could. As Zichen and the others moved forward, there would always be cultivators around them. These people were in charge of monitoring Zichen, and when they saw Zichen move, they would follow suit. At the same time, they would send out signals to their companions. For a time, all the surviving cultivators in this world flew towards the place pointed by the spirit-devouring rat. When Zichen and the others arrived, there were already many people gathered here. These people were the ones who had been following the spirit-devouring rat. These days, the spirit-devouring rat had been moving forward to search, and they had also followed the spirit-devouring rat. At this moment, when they saw the spirit-devouring rat stop and receive the news that everyone was rushing over, they naturally concluded that there was something strange about this place. Thus, they spread out in all directions and launched attacks at a certain spot in the void, wanting to find that strange place. Zichen and the others arrived just in time to see the scene. The spirit-devouring rat looked at the people who were attacking randomly and mocked disdainfully. "What a bunch of idiots! Do you think a miracle will appear with just a few gestures?" "How is it?" Zichen asked. He did not care whether these people were idiots or not. What he cared about was the main hall. The spirit-devouring rat said, "It's the same as before. If we can get it, the harvest will definitely not be smaller than before." The spirit-devouring rat did not use a voice transmission and directly spoke. The cultivators who were paying attention to this side in the distance all heard it and immediately became excited. Glancing at the crowd that was trying to approach with disdain, the spirit-devouring rat led Zichen and the others towards the east. They flew for a full 10 miles before stopping. Seeing the place where the spirit-devouring rat stopped, Zichen and the others felt funny. As for the others, their expressions were very ugly. When they passed by here, they did not notice anything unusual at all. The spirit-devouring rat did not stop here. They did not expect that the place was here, and the spirit-devouring rat flew for a full 10 miles in order to guard against them. The next step was to accurately search. After finding the location, the spirit-devouring rat pointed again. Because it had experience this time, it was not sent flying. In a flash of light, an ancient castle shrouded in restrictions appeared. On the side of the ancient castle, there was a staircase leading to the upper level. There's still one more level. Upon seeing the staircase, the eyes of many lit up. As for the ancient castle, they chose to ignore it. There's also an ancient castle. However, the majority of the people's gazes were on the ancient castle. The first floor of the ancient castle had already brought endless surprises. What about this floor? Looking at the ancient castle in front of him, Zichen's expression was also rather excited. He then said, "Break the formation with all your might." Under everyone's concerted efforts, the restrictions shattered, and the ancient castle appeared in front of everyone. The entire castle gave off a heavy feeling. With the previous experience, Zichen no longer hesitated and was the first to push open the door. Compared to the first castle gate, this gate was much heavier. Zichen had to expend a lot of effort to push it open. As the gate opened, a thick and ancient aura rushed out. Because of the previous experience, when the gate opened this time, no one dared to enter. However, the entrance of the ancient castle was completely blocked by some powerful existences. Only Zhang Haotian, the devil ape, and Zichen had space to stand. As for the others, they were all pushed outside. They blocked the entrance, but did not go forward. They were waiting for Zichen to create a clone to investigate. Zichen did not disappoint. With a flash of light, a golden clone appeared and walked into the castle. Just like before, as soon as it entered the castle, the light around the golden clone suddenly dimmed. At the same time, the clone's body swayed, as if it had lost its balance and almost fell. After taking a step, the clone stopped moving. After a long time, it took another step. No one knew what had happened, so they could only look at Zichen. However, at this moment, Zichen was solemnly looking ahead. At the same time, he was calmly sensing everything that the clone had sensed. He had no time to pay attention to them. There was nothing unusual in front of them, but the clone was walking very slowly. Just as everyone was getting impatient and wanted to take a step forward, they heard a pung sound in front of them. It was the clone that had exploded. What happened? Why did it explode for no reason? Everyone looked at Zichen in puzzlement. How is it? Besides Zichen, the perfect body asked. Zichen glanced at the perfect body and said, "Feel it yourself." The perfect body glared. "You." However, before he could finish his sentence, he saw Zichen flash into the castle. Zichen entered and sent a voice transmission. "Come in too. Be careful of the perfect body. He's a threat to us this time. At the critical moment, we need to stop him." The devil ape and Zhang Haoyan were taken aback when they heard the voice transmission. Following that, they rushed into the castle without any hesitation. No matter how fast everyone rushed in, they could only take one step in before stopping. Therefore, as the castle door was occupied, the others were blocked. They couldn't enter even if they wanted to. As soon as Zichen stepped into the castle, a voice sounded in his sea of consciousness. "Attack or defend." Upon hearing the familiar voice, Zichen frowned slightly and said, "It's you again." The youth appeared in front of him and laughed out loud. "Of course it's me, Zichen. We meet again. I just asked. You didn't appear in their challenge. Are you here to find me?" Zichen asked. "I'm not here to find you. I'm here to see you." The youth corrected him. "Look at me. That's right. Why are you looking at me? I'm not doing anything. I'm just looking." Zichen immediately had goosebumps. He wanted to end this meaningless conversation as soon as possible, so he asked again, "You're the keeper again. You can say that. However, you have a choice this time. Attack or defend. Which do you choose?" When his clone entered just now, he didn't encounter this multiple choice question. Therefore, Zichen was very puzzled and asked, "How do I attack or defend?" Attack means to keep fighting your way in. Defend means to let others fight your way in, the youth explained. "Then I'll attack. I'm not good at defense." After Zichen made his choice, the youth regretfully disappeared. If it was an attack, he could naturally make a move. However, if it was a defense, he couldn't just stand there and let Zichen attack. A mysterious force fell on Zichen from the void. Immediately after, Zichen felt his elemental energy disappear. Only his physical strength was left in his body. After that, a wall appeared in front of Zichen. Without any prompting, Zichen knew what to do. He clenched his fist and punched out. His physical strength was displayed. Bang! With a loud bang, the wall in front of him was shattered by Zichen's great force. The rebound force was easily neutralized by Zichen. In reality, Zichen took the first step. Almost as soon as he took a step, the perfect body beside him also took a step. However, the two of them were in the midst of the test, so they didn't notice each other. After taking a step, Zichen took another step forward. Following that, he walked forward as though he was walking normally. His speed wasn't considered slow, but it was definitely not the fastest. The perfect body was almost at the same pace as him. Next was the demon ape, the dragon man, the ape unicorn, and monk Ming Xan. Finally, it was Zhang Haoyan and company. These people had all made a multiple choice question. Furthermore, all of them chose to attack. Only by attacking would one have the initiative, so their speed was relatively fast. As for those who weren't given a choice, they could only choose to defend. This made their advancement speed much slower. Chun punched out as the stone wall in front of him constantly shattered. As he advanced, the stone wall's toughness increased, but it couldn't stop Zichen. When his avatar vanished, he had already understood some things. Therefore, he got the demon ape and Zhang Haoyin to pay attention to the perfect body. This was because only the perfect body had a physique comparable to Zichen's. Zichen followed the perfect body forward without slowing down. The demon ape and company followed behind and advanced step by step. Compared to them, the others walked much slower. Sai, there's no chance again. From the looks of it, Zichen obtained it again. That might not be the case. That's an ancient race, perfect body. Its speed isn't slower than Zichen's. Zichen has met his match. Many people gave up again and entered the third level. More people stayed outside to watch the outcome. Among them, Demonis and the middle-aged fiend were also present. The two of them didn't enter. Your Highness, if we really don't enter, there might be a chance, the middle-aged fiend said. Ignoring the fact that the chances of success aren't high. Even if there's a chance, we won't enter, Princess said indifferently. They had already gained something, so it was naturally impossible for them to obtain another one. This was because no one would be willing to do so. The middle-aged fiend naturally understood this logic, but he only asked again to verify it. And the result of his verification was that even though there were the most fiends present, Princess still didn't want to offend Zichen. Even if an ancient castle was placed in front of her, Princess wasn't willing to fight for it. Every time a stone wall was broken, another stone wall would appear. The area in front of Zichen was always dark. Finally, after breaking through countless stone walls, Zichen saw light. The moment he saw the light, he had already completed the test and arrived at the front of the hall, at the bottom of the stairs. Just as Zichen was about to take a step, he felt someone beside him. As he turned his head, he saw the perfect body. At that moment, the perfect body was standing beside him. When it saw Zichen look over, it smiled at Zichen with a malicious expression. Let's rely on our own abilities. The smart, perfect body had already guessed what test there would be in the hall. Its face was filled with smugness. Zichen ignored it and looked behind him. The first thing he saw was Demon Ape. It wasn't far from the end. Zichen didn't respond. The perfect body walked forward smugly, full of ambition. Zichen, I'm afraid you won't have a chance this time. He took a few steps up the stairs and walked to the front of the hall before pushing the door open. Suddenly, he felt a force coming from behind him. It was his clothes being grabbed from behind. He turned his head and saw Zichen calmly looking at him, as well as Zichen, who was grabbing his collar. The perfect body asked smugly, Why, do you want to fight? That's what I was thinking. Zichen grabbed the perfect body's clothes and refused to let go. I'm not free. Go play somewhere else. The perfect body waved his hand, but his clothes were still grabbed. Shameless. Chapter 11:10. The fist wind howled as it charged straight at Zichen's face with powerful force. The perfect body didn't show any mercy in this strike. He used all his strength. In a battle with Zichen, showing mercy was equivalent to asking for trouble. It was purely asking for abuse. Zichen's body flashed with golden light as he released a powerful force and similarly punched out. The two fists moved forward in a straight line, emitting a whistling sound as they were about to collide head-on. One was called a perfect body, while the other had a perfect body. The head-on clash between the two would definitely cause a huge commotion. However, when the fists collided in front of the naked eye, there was no sound. There wasn't even an energy fluctuation. The fist beam dissipated upon contact. It was silent. Immediately after, Another fist beam appeared and charged towards the other party at an extremely fast speed. The whistling sound rang out again, but there was no sound of collision. Both of their bodies emitted resplendent golden light, as though two golden men were constantly colliding. The two of them constantly struck out with their palms, fists, fingers, knees, elbows. Every part of their bodies that could erupt with powerful strength was their weapon. However, such a collision should have caused the heavens to collapse and the earth to shatter. It had the aura of thousands of thunderclaps, but it didn't. The collision between the two of them was silent. Furthermore, the two of them's attack movements were almost identical. It looked like a person was demonstrating in front of a mirror. That's right, it was a mirror. This was because the two's attacks seemed to touch, but in fact, there was still some distance between them. Some people saw through the trick. The two of them didn't really clash, but it didn't mean that the two of them were putting on a show or acting. On the contrary, the two of them were attacking with all their might. The reason why they didn't collide was because the two of them felt that such attacks were ineffective and couldn't deal a fatal blow to each other. They were waiting for an opportunity to severely injure each other in one strike. If anyone's reaction was half a beat slower, they would definitely suffer a devastating blow. Seeing the true situation of the battle in front of them, everyone couldn't help but be in an uproar. Weren't the two of them good friends? Why were they fighting with all their might at this moment? Zichen's original magnanimity was still in everyone's minds. At this moment, they couldn't understand why he was fighting to the death with his friend because of an external object. In the blink of an eye, the two of them exchanged hundreds and thousands of blows. An ear-piercing whistle sounded in the air, but none of their attacks landed on each other. Then the demonic ape took a step forward and walked up the stone steps. It was completely awake. From everyone's point of view, the demonic ape's appearance would definitely stop the two of them. After all, they were all friends and brothers. Furthermore, they were the kind that had shared lives with perfect bodies. However, to their surprise, the demonic ape appeared. When it saw the two fighting, it roared and took a step forward. As it took a step forward, a black rod appeared in its hand. It used all its strength to grip the black rod tightly and smashed it at the perfect body's head. Outside the castle, there was an uproar again. They didn't expect the demonic ape to be serious. In the current world, who among those of the same level could withstand the combined might of Zichin and the sky-splitting battle ape? An ear-piercing screech sounded in the air as a surging force began to vibrate. A terrifying aura spread out as the black pole headed straight for the perfect body. The devil ape's indomitable stick shadow represented a kind of attitude, an attitude that it was determined to win. "You guys are serious." The perfect body let out a strange cry as its face was filled with anger. It had no choice but to retreat. As for why it didn't take the opportunity to retreat into the hall, it was because Zichin didn't give it a chance. The perfect body retreated several steps as Zichin took the opportunity to take 2 steps forward. Then he turned around, pushed open the door, and entered the hall. "Zichin, you are shameless!" The perfect body shouted indignantly. Zichin turned his head and smiled smugly at the other party. The perfect body retreated and dodged the demonic ape's strike. However, the black rod in the demonic ape's hand suddenly trembled before sweeping at the perfect body. "Shameless! You bunch of shameless scoundrels!" The perfect body shouted as it brandished its fists and threw them at the stick shadow. A fist against a stick shadow. Even a perfect body has to retreat. The demonic ape smiled indifferently as the stick shadow smashed down. Boom! The two sides collided, and a delayed boom spread out. The ancient castle began to tremble as a destructive force surged out. The demonic ape held the black rod in its hand as its body swayed slightly. After looking at the perfect body again, it took a few steps back and distanced itself from the door. The 2 strikes were equivalent to 1 strike. After repelling the perfect body, the demonic ape put away its rod and easily walked to the entrance of the hall. It smiled at the enraged, perfect body before stepping in. After that, Ape Dragon and company entered one after another. Instead, the perfect body that was the first to arrive was a little slower. Shameless. Truly shameless. I never expected the mighty Zichen of the Infinity Sect to be so shameless. The perfect body gritted his teeth as though Zichen was in his mouth. He reluctantly stepped forward and entered the hall. After the battle ended, everyone outside was dumbfounded. In their minds, although Zichen killed people like scything flax, his way of doing things was definitely righteous. He killed those who deserved to be killed, kept his promise, and was loyal. Back then, because of Zhang Haoyan's words, he could calmly give away an ancient castle. It was likely that he was someone who treated external objects as dung. However, the situation in front of them greatly exceeded their expectations. This was because Zichen was fighting his brothers to the death for these external objects. This made their impression of Zichen change drastically. Outside the castle, the princess glanced at the middle-aged demon. Her gaze seemed to say, "Look, Zichen has gone crazy. If we snatch it again, we will definitely have an intense conflict with the Infinity Sect." The hall in front of him was the same size as the previous one. As the door opened, Zichen stepped in. When he stepped in, a mysterious force descended. This force sealed his essence energy and spiritual senses. At the same time, it began to suppress his physical strength. If the first hall was said to have a great effect on essence energy, then this hall targeted his physical constitution. Zichen had already guessed it, which was why he felt that the perfect body was a threat to him. Thankfully, he stopped the perfect body and was the first to walk in. Although he took 2 more steps than the other party, at critical moments, 1 step could determine victory. A powerful pressure began to suppress his physical strength. At the same time, Zichen felt a burning pain in his body as though flames were burning his body. This time, Zichen didn't even frown as he strode forward. As he walked forward, he had the time to carefully size up the hall. The hall was still very empty. There was nothing around it. The only thing that had something was right in front of him. It was almost the same as before. There was a stone table with a small stone shelf on it that supported a black token in the middle. The black token was naturally the token to control this ancient castle. In addition, on both sides of the stone table, there were 2 weapon racks. However, on one of the weapon racks, there was a layer of blackboard cover. On the cover, there were 3 items. On the other shelf, there were 3 weapons. The 3 weapons were very unique. The first one was a black saber. It was 2 meters long and 3 times as wide as an ordinary saber. It could be said to be huge. The saber's body was engraved with burning flames. When the saber was inserted into the weapon rack, the wide saber gave off a heavy feeling. The second weapon was a black axe. The head of the black axe was very large, like a half-moon millstone. It was very sharp, and the back had a long tip that resembled a long thorn. The handle of the axe was nearly 5 meters long. It could be said to be a black axe. One could imagine how astonishing it would be if someone brandished the axe to attack. The first 2 weapons were very large, so the third was naturally very large. It was a double hammer. The hammerhead of the double hammers was much larger than the second axe. It looked very heavy. It was obvious that these 3 huge items were prepared for people with strong physical strength. Compared to the 3 huge weapons, the 3 items on the stone shelf were much smaller. They were a pair of thin, broken finger gloves, something that looked like a folding fan, a black ruler, and 2 rows of black iron arm rings. There were also 6 items, but compared to the ones in the first level of the ancient castle, these 6 items were much more unconventional and strange. Upon seeing the 6 items, Zichen's eyes were filled with surprise. He didn't stop and walked forward step by step. However, as he advanced, he would turn his head to take a look to prevent the perfect body from catching up from behind. What followed next was a relatively slow chase and contest. In the hall, The competition was based on physical strength. All other strengths were suppressed. The only thing that could compare to Zichen was the perfect body. The perfect body gritted his teeth and endured the scorching pain from his body. He advanced again and again, especially after seeing the 6 unique items. He was even more determined to advance. Due to Zichen's previous move, even if he couldn't obtain the black token, he had to obtain the 6 items. The perfect body walked behind, but as he constantly moved forward, he passed one cultivator after another. He surpassed the Buddhist's Ming Xian and smiled smugly at him. "Monk, why aren't you reciting your scripture of mercy? Why are you here to join in the fun?" Amitabha. It was originally a joke, but to his surprise, Ming Xian stopped fighting after chanting a Buddhist proclamation. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the spot. "Monk, you sure know what's good for you." The perfect body stepped forward smugly and quickly passed the ape dragon. He said, "Forget it. Your physical strength is just a little lacking. You're destined not to reach the end." The ape dragon glared fiercely at the perfect body and took another step forward. The smugness on the perfect body's face intensified. He would always say something when he passed one cultivator after another. Soon he reached 3rd place. He was only 2 steps away from the demonic ape in front of him, and only 6 steps away from Zichen. The perfect body's forehead was already covered in sweat, but his expression was very relaxed. After a few steps, he was shoulder to shoulder with the demonic ape. He smiled at the demonic ape and said, "So what if you play tricks? I still caught up to you. Zichen is almost done for. His perfect body is acquired after all, unlike my natural perfect body. Haha, even if you play tricks, you can't beat me." The entire hall echoed with the perfect body's smug and infuriating voice. He walked forward confidently, preparing to surpass the demonic ape and chase after Zichen. However, once he took a step forward, he couldn't take a second step. Chapter 11:11. The demonic ape's hand that grabbed the perfect body's clothes was like a clamp. It had long been strangled and couldn't break free. The perfect body stared at the demonic ape with widened eyes, his face filled with disbelief. He had already seen Zichen's shamelessness, but he never expected the demonic ape to be so shameless. It actually wanted to use such a retarded and inferior method to stop him like Zichen. However, he tried to break free a few times and realized that he couldn't. It was obvious that the demonic ape had used all its strength. Therefore, he shouted angrily, "Demonic ape, let go!" However, the original one hand suddenly turned into 2 hands. The demonic ape's calm face gradually had a hint of mockery. He didn't say a word, but his expression was mocking the perfect body as though he was saying, "Idiot, continue being smug. Continue walking." Be it the people inside or outside the castle, they were somewhat dumbfounded when they saw the scene. All of them thought that in order to obtain the items here, Zichen was truly unscrupulous. He could think of all kinds of shameless tricks and use them. After failing to break free after a few attempts, Zichen had already taken a second step. The distance between the 2 of them would only increase. Whoosh! The perfect body was already furious. He couldn't be bothered to scold these shameless fellows. He swiped with one hand and a golden beam flashed. His sleeve shattered as a smug look appeared on his face again. As long as Zichen didn't reach the end, he had a chance. He was very confident in his physical strength. As his essence force was weak, he specialized in physical strength. However, his smugness vanished the next moment. This was because the fiend ape's hands quickly grabbed him like black lightning. It grabbed the perfect body tightly and said with a smile, "Continue. Let's see if you can tear all your clothes apart." Shameless. The perfect body began to glow as a resplendent golden light illuminated the surroundings. A powerful force appeared from his body before forming a force tide that surged towards the demonic ape in a bid to blast it away. However, The demonic ape grabbed him tightly and refused to let go, allowing the powerful forces to strike his body. Pum! The energy tide surged towards the demonic ape like a huge wave. After more than 10 times, the demonic ape finally couldn't hold on any longer and couldn't help but retreat. The demonic ape took a few steps back as it grabbed the corner of his clothes. Humph! Perfect Body snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves, and walked forward again. The devil ape had only stopped him for a short moment, but he was already 9 steps away from Zeechin. Although it was difficult for him to take even 1 step forward, 9 steps was still a huge gap. I never expected you people from the Infinity Sect to be so shameless. You are weak, but you are thinking of such crooked methods, the Perfect Body said with extreme dissatisfaction as it advanced. It doesn't matter if it's crooked or evil, as long as it succeeds in the end, Zichen's indifferent voice rang out. By now, almost everyone had given up and were waiting for the outcome of the battle between the two of them. Humph! Shameless, truly shameless. The Perfect Body continued forward, but all he could do was grumble. He was angry, but he didn't harbor any resentment. This was because if it were him, he would have done the same. Unfortunately, none of the ancients who came this time had the strength of Demon Ape. As the pressure increased, the subsequent journey became difficult. Zichen's speed slowed down, and the gap between the two of them narrowed. Zichen's Perfect Body technique continued to circulate. Wave after wave of powerful energy surged out from every part of his body. It surged out from his blood and filled his entire body to resist the pressure. He then took large strides forward. When he was still 10 steps away from the stone table, the Perfect Body was only 5 steps away from him. However, after resting, Zichen took another step forward. The scorching heat emitted from his body made his robes drenched in sweat. The Perfect Body wasn't any better, but as long as he advanced, he would put immense pressure on Zichen. Hee, let's see if you take the token or the weapon. Looking at Zichen in front of him, the Perfect Body chuckled. Zichen was somewhat exhausted, but he still replied, "What if I take both?" The Perfect Body laughed out loud. "That's exactly what I want, as long as you have the ability. However, I still have to advise you to think it through. Don't end up with nothing when the time comes." Indeed, Zichen was hesitating as he advanced. The 6 special weapons were indeed extraordinary, but they were ultimately far inferior to the ancient castle. No matter how he looked at it, he should choose to obtain the token first. And Zichen was indeed thinking so. He didn't hesitate to make up his mind. Therefore, he walked unswervingly towards the token. His goal was very clear. The Perfect Body laughed smugly as he walked towards the weapons in front of him. Without looking at the situation, just from the sound, those who didn't know would think that the Perfect Body had obtained the greatest victory. The demonic ape took a deep look at the Perfect Body before looking at Zhang Haoyan, who wasn't far away. It also walked forward. Seeing the demonic ape begin to move again, the Perfect Body said disdainfully, "Demonic ape, what does this have to do with you?" The demonic ape sneered, "Can't I train my body?" The Perfect Body nodded solemnly and said, "Seriously, that's right. Your body does need training because it's too weak." The demonic ape sneered again. Zichen, who was walking forward step by step, was finally about to approach the token. As the Perfect Body was chasing after him, he also performed exceptionally. Finally, he walked to the stone table. The Perfect Body was still 3 steps away from Zichen. Zichen panted heavily as he looked at the Perfect Body from behind and said, "You won't have a chance." The Perfect Body said disdainfully, "Do you think I care about a crappy token? These 6 weapons aren't bad, so I'll reluctantly accept them. By the way, don't ask for them from me in the future, because I'm in a bad mood. I won't give them to you." Zichen took a deep look at the Perfect Body but didn't say a word. At the same time, he half squatted there and kept panting as sweat dripped down. After waiting for Zichen to take the token, the perfect body said unhappily, "Hey, can you hurry up?" Zichen waved his hand and said, "Wait, I'll catch my breath and wait for you." Shameless. If you really wanted to wait for me, you wouldn't have stopped me just now. Hurry up. Take the token, and I'll take the weapons. I can't wait any longer, the perfect body urged. Zichen looked at the perfect body and said seriously, "What if I want them all?" The perfect body laughed out loud. "As long as you have the ability, you can take them all. However, this is clearly unrealistic because I'm unwilling." Zichen shook his head and sighed softly. Thinking back to the first level, you only managed to take 5 steps despite rolling and crawling. Back then, your pathetic appearance was really amusing. However, back then, your actions were only rather funny. Now you look so detestable. Zichen could have reached out to take the token, but he didn't move. No one knew why. Zichen waited there. Logically speaking, the perfect body should have had a chance, but he didn't move. The only one still moving was the demonic ape, but it had clearly exhausted its strength and was unable to approach. This is called detestable. Open your eyes wide and take a good look. Look carefully. This is detestable. This is confidence, all right? The perfect body said loudly. I can still distinguish between confidence and detestable. Humph, cut the crap. Quickly take away the token. Zichen's panting gradually calmed down. Although his body felt like it was on fire, he still persisted. He took a deep breath and said, "All right then. I want the token. You have to be prepared. Don't worry. I promise I won't let you." Without waiting for the perfect body to finish its sentence, Zichen grabbed the token and immediately acknowledged it as its owner. The process only took an instant. After the acknowledgement, the pressure in the hall instantly disappeared. With the pressure gone, everyone regained their mobility. They rushed towards the 6 weapons at extreme speed. The perfect body was the closest to the 6 weapons and was the fastest. He should have been able to succeed. However, the truth was that just as the pressure disappeared, black beams of light suddenly appeared on the perfect body's body. These black beams were like chains that wrapped around the perfect body. The powerful force that had just been released in his body instantly receded like a tidal wave. As a result, just as his body leaped up, he lost all his strength and fell to the ground due to inertia. Just as the perfect body's body was about to fall, a crazy killing intent suddenly appeared in the hall. This killing intent chilled one's heart and left one trembling. A cold wind swept past everyone like a cold blade, bringing with it a hurricane that rushed towards a weapon rack. The cold wind swept through the weapon rack before sweeping away the 3 weapons on it. Following that, the cold wind transformed into a beam of light. It was Zhang Haoyan. At that moment, the perfect body's body fell heavily to the ground with a bang. Zhang Haoyan took away 3 weapons. As for the other 3, they were naturally taken away by Zichen, who was nearby. The change happened instantly as the 6 weapons instantly had owners. Demonic ape, how dare you plot against me? The perfect body broke free from the black light on its body and jumped up from the ground, glaring at demonic ape. However, everything was over. The ancient castle had recognized its owner, and the 6 weapons belonged to Zichen. It was all over. The hall was filled with an oppressive aura. This aura was released by the enraged perfect body. It left one trembling. Although it was over, he was indignant. He was originally the person with the highest chance of obtaining the ancient castle. But under Zichen's repeated schemes, he didn't even obtain an ancient weapon, much less the ancient castle. Hence, he was enraged. A powerful aura swept through the hall like a storm. Seeing that the situation was amiss, the others immediately walked out. In the blink of an eye, there were only 4 people left in the hall. They were Zichen, demonic ape, Zhang Haoyan, and the perfect body. Boom! After everyone came out, the hall door closed. It was like 2 small worlds inside and outside. No one knew what was happening inside. Zichen has 3 people inside. He won't kill the perfect body, right? If he really wants to attack, the perfect body will definitely die. However, Zichen has always been on good terms with the ancient race. He probably won't really kill the perfect body, right? Why not? Humans die for wealth and birds die for food. If he really kills the perfect body, Zichen will lose a powerful backer. I'm afraid it will cause a lot of trouble. Chapter 11:12. The hall was closed, and there were only 4 people in it. The perfect body had been schemed against several times. He had gone from being the strongest competitor to nothing. He was so angry that he wanted to kill. A violent aura surged around him and filled the entire hall. Seeing that a battle was about to begin, everyone immediately came out when they saw that the situation wasn't looking good. In their imaginations, the hall's door was closed. The atmosphere in the hall was already tense, ready to erupt at any moment. At that moment, the atmosphere in the hall was indeed oppressive. The perfect body who had been schemed against really wanted to kill, but there was Zichen and company in front of him. It didn't seem like he could kill them, so he settled for the next best thing. Who dares to fight me? The perfect body's voice exploded in the hall like thunder. However, no one helped him fulfill this wish. He released his strongest realm aura and was fully prepared to fight with all his might. However, no one fought with him. No one paid him any attention. No one even looked at him. The perfect body was directly ignored. Do you dare fight me? The perfect body was filled with fighting spirit as his thunderous voice sounded again. Come, let's see the effects of this hall first. The perfect body's words echoed in the empty hall like thunderclaps. However, the 3 of them didn't seem to hear him and ignored him. Zichen gestured for the 2 of them to come over. Then he took out the black token and activated his spiritual perception to control it. The next moment, the token began to glow. The patterns in it lit up and rumbling sounds came from the hall. The flat ground suddenly cracked open in an extremely regular pattern. Stone walls appeared from the cracks. These stone walls divided the hall before regrouping, forming 99 small rooms. The scene in front of them was the same as the first floor's hall. However, the effects of the 99 rooms were different. One was for strength training, while the other was for body training. Seeing so many rooms appear in the empty hall in the blink of an eye, the 3 of them were very satisfied, although there was still no sign of life inside. The rumbling sounds affected the perfect body's fighting spirit. The 99 rooms that appeared also blocked the reverberation of his thunderous voice. He tried his best to control his fighting spirit and shouted coldly at Zichen and company, Do you dare fight me? He was ignored again. After looking through the hall that it was satisfied with, the demon ape said, Take out the ancient weapon and take a look. I think that armband suits me quite well. Why don't we just split it like this? Zichen nodded and said, Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. Of the 6 weapons, Zichen and Zhang Haoyan each took 3. Zichen took the small ones, while Zhang Haoyan took the 3 large ones. The 6 ancient armaments were all taken out. The 3 huge ones were naturally ignored and handed over to Zhang Haoyan. The devil ape looked at the black armbands. There were a total of 18 of them. The black armbands were engraved with flame patterns. The devil ape did not stand on ceremony and put them on its arm. As soon as he put it on, he felt a force coming from the black armband, and his arm instantly sank. That's right, it does suppress one's strength. It's extremely helpful for body transformation. It's a good thing. The devil ape clenched its fists tightly before waving its arms vigorously. Its speed wasn't as fast as before, but it was filled with strength. When its arms fell, a strong wind whistled. After carefully sensing it, the devil ape's face lit up. It was very satisfied with the armbands. With 1 out of the 3, there were only 2 left. Zichen looked at Zhang Haoyan and gestured for him to choose first. Zhang Haoyan spread out his hands and said, My physical strength is too weak. This thing is a burden to me at the moment. It affects my flexibility. Zhang Haoqian didn't choose, but Zichen didn't stand on ceremony and took the black boxing gloves. When he put them on, he immediately felt a heavy force. Furthermore, his originally powerful body was suppressed, making him feel extremely uncomfortable. The gloves were relatively light, but Zichen could feel the pressure from them. This pressure hindered the circulation of his perfect strength, making it difficult for him to circulate his power smoothly. But this was a good thing. Zichen believed that once he smoothed out this discomfort, his body's strength would change again. Zichen nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. In the future, I can wear boxing gloves and hold a halberd. As long as I walk around, my strength and essence energy will increase. I never expected that there would be such a magical thing in this world. After confirming that he was ignored, the fighting spirit around the perfect body finally began to decline. During this period, he shouted a few more times, but no one paid him any attention. Helpless, he could only accept the fact that he was ignored. The third item was a folding fan. A folding fan that could suppress one's physical strength was definitely a rare item among ancient armaments. Unfortunately, Zhang Haoyan was a killer. He was very cold and liked to hide in the dark. Although the folding fan was a weapon, he liked to use swords. Seeing Zhang Haoyan shake his head, Zichen was about to put away the folding fan when a voice suddenly sounded. "Hey, can you give me that folding fan?" The fighting spirit on the perfect body had long vanished without a trace. The powerful aura had also been completely restrained. At that moment, there was no longer any anger in his eyes. All he saw was the bright light emitted from the folding fan. This was because he realized that the folding fan was extremely suitable for him. Be it acting cool or using it as a weapon, it was extremely suitable for him. It was as though it was tailor-made. The perfect body stopped shouting, and only then did the trio's attention land on him. The demonic ape said teasingly, "Here you go. Sorry, we're in a bad mood today. We don't want to give anything to others." This was what the perfect body had said with a smug expression when he was confident that he could obtain an ancient armament. Back then, his expression was asking for a beating. Now that the demonic ape said it, a hint of embarrassment immediately appeared on his face. However, they had still underestimated the thickness of the perfect body skin. Embarrassment flashed across his face as he strode forward and wrapped his arm around the demonic ape's shoulder. He said, as though they were close friends, "Demonic ape, don't stand on ceremony. We are brothers. It's just a folding fan. It's nothing." The demonic ape turned its head and continued ignoring the other party. The perfect body looked at Zhang Haoyan again, but seeing his cold expression, he probably couldn't get anything useful out of him. Therefore, he directly spoke to Zichen. "Zichen, we went through thick and thin together back then. We killed spirit bodies and experienced many life and death situations. We can be considered brothers, right?" Looking at the perfect body's appearance, Zichen nodded seriously and almost laughed out loud. "It's good that you admit that we're brothers. Besides, when you were trapped by the array formation, didn't I bring people to rescue you without a word? Furthermore, during that rescue, I was injured because I exerted too much strength. I haven't recovered yet." Zhang Haoyan and the demonic ape immediately had looks of contempt on their faces. They felt that this person was actually so shameless. However, Zichen nodded and said, "That's right. I'll remember your kindness." The perfect body glared and pointed at the folding fan. "What's the use of remembering my kindness? Repay me now. The opportunity is right in front of you. The item is also in front of you. Don't miss it." Zichen said, "Didn't I give you an ancient weapon previously? Isn't that considered repayment?" The perfect body said unhappily, "That was a long time ago, yet you still want to mention it to me. All right, let's do the math again. Back in the Infinity Sect, Wang Shan swindled a folding fan from me. Did I give it to you? That's a soul spirit weapon. It's a soul spirit weapon that hasn't recognized a master. It should have been mine. Don't deny it. I've already seen you use it. So you have to make it up to me." Upon hearing the perfect body's shameless words, the few of them couldn't help but laugh out loud. Their smiles were filled with smugness. Both sides knew each other very well, so a battle naturally wouldn't happen. Just like before, Zichen naturally didn't care about a mere fan. The tightly shut door opened again. Everyone widened their eyes and looked at the people inside. They wanted to see if 3 or 4 people came out, were their heads bleeding or if they were missing an arm or a leg. For people came out. None of them were missing, nor were there any bleeding heads or missing arms or legs. They saw the perfect body, who had originally wanted to die, come out with Zichen and company. Furthermore, the way they appeared was with their arms around each other's shoulders like good brothers. The 4 of them chatted and laughed. They didn't look like they were about to fight to the death. Upon seeing this, everyone sighed. "Boring," Su Mengyao said indifferently. Clearly, she had long known that a fight wouldn't break out. The scene from before was at most a prank. After walking out of the ancient castle and looking at everyone with strange expressions, the perfect body coughed lightly. A folding fan appeared in his hand, and he opened it with a snap. He was handsome to begin with and was extremely perfect. At this moment, with the smug look on his face, countless people wanted to slap him in the face with the soles of their shoes. Everyone came out and stood outside the ancient castle. Zichen held the token, and with a thought, a mysterious force emitted from the token and landed on the ancient castle. In the next moment, the ancient castle began to tremble. Then it rumbled like an earthquake as the ground trembled continuously. The huge ancient castle shrank as it trembled until it was the size of a palm. Zichen waved his hand, and the ancient castle flew into his hand. He held it in his palm. With the ancient castle taken away, the treasure hunting trip on this level was over. Next was the 3rd level. There were good things on the first 2 levels. No one believed that the 3rd level would be empty. Therefore, after seeing that it was over, they rushed to the 3rd level. In the sky above the 2nd level of the heavenly realm, 2 demon supremacies, the prince and a demon, quietly watched everything that happened below. They were somewhat puzzled that Zichen had given the princess a hull. At the same time, they cursed Zichen for being an idiot. He actually gave such a good thing away. However, it didn't matter. In the end, it would be theirs anyway. At this moment, seeing Zichen obtain another hull, the demon supremacy only sneered and led his men to the 3rd level. Along the way, one of the demon sovereigns said, "This world has 3 layers. There are 3 ancient castles that represent the pinnacle of power. They are respectively force, origin, and will. When the 3rd ancient castle appears, we will kill everyone here and then challenge the higher level existences." The demon supremacy disappeared, and the youth appeared the next moment. He looked at the departing figures of the demon supremacy and company and muttered, "It's really boring and boring." With that said, he waved his sleeve forward. A force passed through the 2nd level and landed on the 3rd level. The 3rd level of the heavenly realm was also the last level. Chapter 11:13. The aura of the 3rd layer heaven realm was very unusual and made people feel dangerous. The heavenly beasts here were much stronger and more dangerous than the previous 2 layers. However, there were almost no weaklings who could successfully reach the 3rd layer. As for rogue cultivators, there were even fewer. Every time they set out, they formed a team. So under everyone's joint efforts, the heavenly beasts were killed one by one. At the same time, everyone's thoughts were all on the mysterious castle. If they found it early, there was still hope for them to obtain it. The spirit-devouring rat showed everyone its keen sense of treasure hunting. As a result, as the spirit-devouring rat moved forward, there would always be some cultivators following behind it, either in the open or in the dark. Wherever the spirit-devouring rat passed, they would release energy attacks. Idiots. Seeing the despicable actions of the people behind it, the spirit-devouring rat's face showed a disdainful expression. After cursing inwardly, it sped up. In the third layer heaven realm, killing heavenly beasts was secondary. Most people were concerned about the castle, but according to the experience of the previous 2 layers, the journey to find the castle would be very time-consuming. Because even the spirit-devouring rat, who was a natural treasure hunter, was not sure if it could find it in a short time, let alone others. So in the entire third layer heaven realm, although many people were looking for the castle, they were relatively not in a hurry. Zichen and the others also entered the third layer heaven realm after a long time. However, a strange change happened when everyone stepped into the third layer heaven realm. In this world, a hurricane suddenly appeared. This hurricane was like a tornado, raging from one end of the world to the other. The appearance of the storm caused the entire world to shake, as if it was welcoming a great earthquake, rumbling. The spirit chi in the world became extremely chaotic, and spatial cracks appeared in the sky. Some of the powerhouses in the sky were instantly torn apart by the cracks, dying before they could even scream. An oppressive and dangerous aura filled the entire world, as if a peerless evil was about to appear. Then a loud cry resounded in this world, and a flame ripple appeared from the depths of this world, spreading to the outer world. Zichen and the others were very familiar with this flame ripple. In the past, when the everlasting sect was in danger, this flame ripple appeared and killed several Earth origin realm cultivators, saving the everlasting sect. At that time, a similar powerful cry resounded in the world. A loud and powerful cry rang out, and the expressions of the 2 demon lords in the void immediately changed. The faces of the prince and the devil beside him were incomparably pale. There was a strong vibration force in the cry just now. The 2 of them were in the void, and their souls were almost destroyed. The prince looked at the devil and asked, "What a terrifying sound! What is it?" "This voice has never sounded when we were sealed. It only appeared once recently, and this is the 2nd time. I think it should be the saint's pet. After so many years, it was revived because it was extraordinary. Of course, it could also be that it broke the seal," the demon lord said in a low voice. "Then, do you have the confidence to deal with the demon sovereign?" The demon lord shook his head. "I'm not sure. We only fought with a saint back then and were sealed by him. As for that pet, its strength shouldn't exceed a saint's. However, judging from its loud voice, I wonder how much of its strength it has recovered." "Then what should we do?" The prince looked worried. A cold light flashed across the demon lord's face. He said coldly, "If we want to control this place, we have to kill this pet. Now that things have come to this, we can only kill everyone here and use their essence blood to recover our strength." At first, I wanted to watch the show slowly. Now that the saint's pet has been revived, we don't have much time. Let the castle appear in advance. With that, the demon lord waved his sleeves forward. The flame ripples spread out into the distance and slowly disappeared from everyone's sight. The whole world fell into silence again, but the oppressive aura from before became stronger. The change happened in the depths. As the change stopped, everyone looked toward the depths. After a slight hesitation, they flew toward the depths. Zichen, the castle, suddenly appeared for some reason. As soon as the flame ripples disappeared, the spirit-devouring rat sent a message. Zichen's expression changed when he heard it. What happened? Everyone saw the change in Zichen's expression. "The castle on this level suddenly appeared," Zichen said, his expression uncertain. No one knew what he was thinking. "What? The castle suddenly appeared? Then let's go quickly. What are you still standing here for?" Perfect Body, who was with Zichen, shouted. Then he put away his folding fan and rushed to the castle as fast as he could. Why did the castle suddenly appear? Zhang Haotian asked with a frown. Zichen shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. "Then are we going?" Seeing Zichen not moving, the demon ape asked. Zichen shook his head and said, I keep feeling that something is wrong. It seems that we have overlooked something. Overlooked something? I'm not sure. Meng Yao, you calculate. Hearing that the castle suddenly appeared, Su Meng Yao began to deduce. But the road ahead was chaotic and she couldn't deduce anything at all. After a while, she shook her head and said nothing. Let's go. No matter what we have overlooked, we have to take a look first. The group walked toward the depths. After the change, the castle suddenly appeared in this world. Moreover, the castle that appeared this time didn't even have a restriction outside. Any random cultivator would be able to easily push open the ancient castle. It's actually opened. It's the same as the original castle. The one who pushed open the castle's door was a monster. He shouted excitedly, Yes, it's exactly the same castle. I didn't expect that we would be the first to discover the castle. This is our opportunity. Let's hurry in and search for treasures before Zichen and the others arrive. Yes, let's go in quickly. This was a small team of monsters. There were a total of 8 people. Looking at the castle in front of them, their expressions became extremely excited. At this moment, they were so excited that they didn't know that there was a person in the distance. To be precise, a spirit-devouring rat was coldly looking at them. Seeing the 8 of them carefully enter the castle, the spirit-devouring rat said indifferently, I wonder how long you can last. The 8 of them entered one after another. The first person took 3 steps and his body suddenly exploded, turning into a broken corpse. Bang! Immediately after, the second person also took 3 steps and his body directly exploded. What happened next was like a chain reaction. Boom! 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 The 8 demons who had entered the ancient castle all exploded and died. Their broken corpses scattered in the castle, and blood stained the castle's ground red. But in the next moment, these broken corpses began to burn, and the castle's door that had just been opened automatically closed. Seeing the 8 people die one after another, the spirit-devouring rat said coldly, The third wave. The sound of breaking air rang out again, and another group of cultivators arrived. Seeing the lonely castle in front of them, they were stunned, and then their faces were filled with excitement. After sending a voice transmission to their families, they landed in front of the castle and easily pushed it open. It's the same as the previous castle. I've seen it before. I didn't expect that we would be the first to arrive. This is our opportunity. Let's go in quickly. It was almost the same conversation as before. Then, this small team carefully entered the castle. In less than 5 steps, their bodies exploded. After all of them died, the castle's door closed again. The 4th wave. The spirit-devouring rat calculated indifferently. After a moment, it said again, the 5th wave. After the death of the 5 waves of cultivators, the sound of breaking air became much more intense. Many cultivators were rushing over. The 6th wave of cultivators died in front of the spirit-devouring rat, but their corpses did not disappear. There were no flames on the ground, and the castle's door did not close again. Soon after, many cultivators arrived and gathered outside the castle's door. Dead, they're all dead. After they arrived, the flames that hadn't appeared before appeared again. Then they burned the corpses, and the ground became clean again. It seems that the difficulty this time is a bit high. The people who sent us the message are all dead. The people of the various factions guessed that their subordinates had died, but they didn't care much. In this place, it was normal for a few people to die. They looked around and didn't see Zichen. Their hearts were at ease, and there was almost no need for discussion. They led their people into the castle. Everyone had the same idea in their hearts, and that was to take advantage of Zichen's absence to quickly enter the castle and take the token that controlled the castle. Everyone began to move forward. The spirit-devouring rat hid in the distance and quietly watched the scene, watching them easily take more than 10 steps. The spirit-devouring rat, who was originally suspicious of the castle, was now even more certain that there was something strange about the castle. This was because the previous 6 waves of people had not taken more than 5 steps, but now, most of them had taken more than 10 steps. Bang! A moment later, someone had already taken more than 20 steps. Only then did an explosion sound come out. It was the body of a cultivator who had taken more than 10 steps that exploded. The crowd didn't care about this explosion. At this moment, they all gritted their teeth and tried to walk to the front of the hall. Bang! After a few breaths, the explosion sounded again. A few breaths of time, the number of cultivators entering the castle gradually decreased. As the number of deaths gradually increased, there were also some people who were about to reach the end and reach the main hall. This looked like a real test. Those who died were all weak, but for some reason, the spirit-devouring rat had an uneasy feeling in its heart. This uneasiness was as if someone was controlling the castle. Whoever he wanted to die would die. The leader of a faction finally approached the main hall. He took a step up the stairs and passed the test. Then he exhaled heavily, and his expression became extremely excited. This was because he was the first person to arrive at the main hall. Behind him, the explosions continued, much more frequent than before. However, he had already arrived here, so he didn't care how many people died. As for the people behind him, because they saw someone successfully walk to the front of the hall, they naturally had to give it a try. The leader of the faction walked up the stairs and came to the door of the hall. Without hesitation, he pushed open the door. The door opened, and the black stone table at the end of the hall reappeared. There was a token on it, and there were 6 weapons on both sides. He took a deep breath and entered the hall. Behind him, more people crazily rushed into the castle. As Zichen wasn't around, everyone had a chance. When the perfect body arrived, he shouted and rushed in. Moments later, Zichen and the others arrived. However, before they could approach the castle, the spirit-devouring rat appeared to stop them. You're tuning in to the Thunderous YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.